Hello, friends. Welcome to Coding Garden. Welcome to YouTube. We're going live on YouTube now. We're just trying it out. We're gonna try it out for a couple weeks, see if things are any different. But that's the plan for now. So if you see the purple chats, those are actually coming from Twitch, but I'm not live on Twitch. But you can chat in Twitch. You can also resub and gift on Twitch if you really want to. But we're live on YouTube. We're live on YouTube. Thanks. Yeah, I like this background. This background, I use Midjourney to generate it. But yeah, good to see you all. So yeah, in terms of getting the drops working on YouTube, I don't know if I can point you to a stream that does that. Maybe I can. I guess that's true, one computer guy. But oh, you know what? I worked on the chat overlay for YouTube, I believe, on members only streams. So I didn't actually work on it live because I didn't want to leak anything. So if you are a Twitch sub or YouTube member or patron in Discord, there is, if you scroll up in the members only channel, there's some members only streams where I worked on this chat overlay to get YouTube into it. But basically it's just the YouTube API, and all of the code is on GitHub. So if you go to this repo, there is, I mean, it's pretty abstracted, but you do have YouTube and then the YouTube chat service. And so this is the backend that's actually listening for YouTube chats. And then that's spitting it out over WebSockets because it's a Feathers backend. And then this overlay pulls that in. So this is the codes that actually pulls YouTube chats in. And then now that we're pulling in YouTube chats, my chatbot can listen for those for like the drop game. So for instance, if you're on YouTube, we can play the drop game now. So if you do !drop me, that will drop your avatar. So that I have a backend that's listening for those chats. So like that is me. And if you do it too, your avatar will be dropped. And so we're listening for those YouTube chats in the same drop game that we listen to over on Twitch. And then also we have chat commands here that so now that I'm able to, yeah, it works on YouTube. So now that I'm able to listen to YouTube chats, I also have a bot that can send YouTube chats. So all of the commands, like basically the informational commands are supported over here on YouTube. So yeah, so you'll see Samwise Gardner will respond to your commands. And if you go here, you can, this is not the right link. I need to update that. Yes, these are all the possible commands that you can use that give you information about all the stuff that we do. I need to update. Let me update that command really quick. Oh, I guess I would have to restart the bot if I update the text of the. Oof, it's tricky, but I am gonna at least update it on the Twitch side. And then we'll say hello to everybody and get into this. I realize I just started the stream and we're already talking about stuff. We'll take a step back. Okay. Hi everyone. thanks for being here. But all the other commands, like I guess we have like a listed command. And yeah, and so this is the other thing we did is if the bot is sending a message that's too long, it'll break it up into multiple messages. Yeah. There are mods on YouTube. Let's see if anyone's here. I think I saw Andrew. Yeah, so Andrew is here and Murdoch is here. And Cheddar should be a mod. Yeah, Ched. So definitely go sub to Ched right now. He's been streaming on YouTube. I mean, sorry, streaming on Twitch and uploading to YouTube, but he should be a mod. Moderator. Great. There you go. Oh, and Fob. But how do I know it's you, Fob? I guess if you have the domain. And the live modes. Okay, and so actually let me take care of this really quick. I'm gonna hide my screen. If you're a mod, let me know in the Discord what your handle is in the mod channel, and I'll go ahead and add everyone. So Yeah, just fob and Limeotes. Confirm. I mean, I would assume Limeotes got the Limeotes handle. You only need 150 more, Roga? Like 150,000? Yeah. All right, I got you, Limeotes. All right, what else? There's a bunch of. I'm gonna catch up. So people sent chat messages. I'm not gonna forget about you. I'm gonna scroll back and see all the chat messages that were sent. Make sure I don't miss anything. Um, what could go wrong? I mean, they could just like mass delete messages if they really wanted to. There you go. I added fob. I see fob typing, so I assume that is them. Cool. That should be good for now. If you show up later, mods, let me know, and let me know in the Discord what your YouTube name handle is, and we'll do that. So I'm only live on YouTube. Twitch, I'm live on Twitch, but live on Twitch is telling you to come watch on YouTube. All right. The first order of business is to say hello, and then we'll talk about the Discord. So let's say hi to everybody. And then, and before that, I'll let you know. So if you're watching on YouTube and you see your handle in the overlay here, you might not see it in the chat. I feel like YouTube is iffy with it. Like sometimes they show your username, sometimes they show your handle. But YouTube is transitioning to handles like this. So there's a pinned chat right now. If you go to that support article, it tells you how you can set your handle on YouTube. So handles on YouTube are basically like usernames instead of first last name, like YouTube has been doing for so long. So if you see a handle here that you don't like or you forgot to set it, click that link and it'll tell you how to set it. I have not implemented anything there yet. I think the other thing to look at is YouTube enable gift memberships. There's a thing you have to do, unfortunately, to even be able to gift memberships. Like you have to allow the setting. How to enable YouTube gift memberships. Is this what we want? I mean, I don't want to watch a video for it. I want the support article. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Yeah, so we're doing YouTube because it has better discoverability and growth. YouTube is where I started. YouTube is why I am as big as I am. YouTube is why a lot of people watch me. Eventually I switched to Twitch, but opt in and get gift memberships. YouTube support opt-in gift memberships. But yeah, there's yeah. Oh, nice, Roga. Hi, Emma. How's it going? Thank you, Josh. You should be a mod over here too, right? Cool. Yeah, so this one-time opt-in. Yeah, okay. So this is another link that you'll want to check out. We'll throw this in the opt-in to membership gifts here. So YouTube now has membership gifting that you can do. But in order to even be able to receive a gift, so if you're not a member of my channel and you want to possibly get gifted if somebody gifts memberships, you need to do this. You need to go to my channel, click the join, click the three dots, go to gift settings, and click allow gifts. So yeah. Yeah, and Clarkio, thank you for the sub. I don't know if you're watching on YouTube, Clarkio, but thank you for the resub. Cool. All right, let's say hi to everybody. If you want me to say hi to you in the chat, just say hi, hello, hey, yo, greetings, hiya, sup, what's up, morning, afternoon, evening, howdy, good day, coding hiyo, vohio, or bogahay. Say any one of these things. I will acknowledge you. I'll say hi right back to you. And we're going to go back in time to 49 minutes ago. Mark was the first to say howdy. And Limelots, thank you for the 3 years. That's awesome. But yeah, what's up, Mark and Samit and Paulo George and McManus and Raul Springer and Avi Rumi and Hare Krishna, how's it going? What's up? Victor Ramos and Dana Chu and Zelino and Mark and Zelino and Demerka and Gio. What's up, Dr. Phantom and Vittorio? Yeah, and so I mean, I didn't address here why it's been so long since I last streamed, but I basically took a summer break. I didn't stream for about a month, and then I did a stream last week on Thursday where I talked about what's next for Coding Garden and stuff like that. So check out the VOD on Twitch for right now if you want more info on my break and stuff like that. What's up, Tim? And Default and SC May, how's it going? What's up, Brian? And Fob and Murdoch and Limotes and George and Imlem. My React Roots course kind of might have helped me get a job. Kind of might have. Well, I'm guessing that you're in the process of applying to a job, so good luck with that, Imlem. And glad to hear it. That's awesome. Yeah, I hope you do get a job. And yeah, that's awesome. And Harshukisha, how's it going? What's up, Fucha? And it's by Ethereal. And Yi Tim Tate, how's it going? What's up, Ched and Alex and Roga and Joshua and Clock and Julian and a funny monkey. What's up, Murdoch and Alberyl and Emil and Toasted Cheeses and Origin. Welcome in, everyone. Now that's a testimonial for a site if I ever saw it. Well, it's funny because it's like, well, it sort of maybe kind of did that, but we'll see. Yeah, a hype train is close on Twitch. That's hilarious. That's honestly hilarious. Yeah, so and that's the other issue with creating a YouTube chatbot is it has to run in the backend because the way that you interface with Twitch chat with YouTube chat is via the YouTube API, and you have to send your API key along with it. And you shouldn't do that from the front end because if someone has your API key, then they can use up your quota. Yeah, satisfied customer. It kind of maybe helped. And Murdoch, thank you for the bits. You are too kind. I appreciate that. And Dr. Phantom, thank you for the bits as well. All right, I'm going to scroll back to see if I missed anything. I know people were really excited when the stream started, so I'm just going to catch up on any messages that I might have missed. And then we're going to talk about community in the Discord, because there's some things that you can do over in the Discord right now to kind of be part of the community. And be noticed in the community. Yeah. So yeah, why Twitch streams reduced? I'm mainly streaming on YouTube because the discoverability and growth is much better here on YouTube than it is on Twitch. Specifically for programming. Twitch is not meant for live coding and programming. There are a couple of streamers that have done really well, but Twitch is for gaming and just chatting. It's not really for programming. And after a live stream goes live on Twitch, there's very little discoverability for people to watch that VOD. On YouTube, there's a huge amount of discoverability. So when this stream ends, YouTube will suggest this stream VOD to thousands of people. And those thousands of people might find my live stream from the VOD that would have never heard of me before. And that doesn't happen on Twitch. So that's one of the main reasons I'm getting back to doing that. Because that's what I used to do on YouTube back in the day. I used to be a YouTube streamer. And thank you, Raw Springer. Yeah, I like my studio too. I talked about it on the coming back stream last week. I did a whole lot of organizing and cleaning, and so now you get a wider view of my basement studio, so you can see all my stuff. But yeah, I'm in a basement. That's why I have a light on this plant over here. I'll turn it off. I literally plug the plant in so that it can survive in the basement. So yeah, that's a thing. Let's see. Yeah, and Ralph Springer, good to see. Yeah, there's a lot of people that originally found me on YouTube. So, and Valk, welcome in. Let's build something cool. Yeah, so we'll talk about it in a second when we talk about Discord, because we have this thing called the Daily Stand Up channel. But what I potentially want to build is a Discord bot. I don't know if I'll build that today because I want to answer a lot of questions today, but I want to build a Discord bot that pings people that have chosen a specific role to do their daily stand-up. So we'll probably have different time zones. So we'll have like US daily stand-up, Europe daily stand-up, Asia daily stand-up, maybe one more time zone. And then you can choose which time zone you're in, and the bot will ping you once a day to send a message in the daily stand-up channel, depending on what time zone you're in. So we might build that today. That could be fun to build. I wonder if anyone from Twitch ever realized how handy the pop-up chat would be for watching streams on YouTube and chatting on the stream on Twitch. Honestly, I mean, you could tell people that life hack right now. So if you pop out the Twitch chat and then make the YouTube video smaller, you can put Twitch chat next to the YouTube video. Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy to be back. It's good to see all your faces in the chat too. I appreciate you all hanging out. Yeah, welcome in everyone. Why don't I see the members part of Discord? Do I have to complete something? Make sure. Oh yeah, so this we'll talk more about Discord, but make sure if you haven't been in the Discord in a long time, click on channels and roles, and if you are a member of some sort, make sure you click the supporter only channels. Now, not anybody that clicks this, you have to actually have the roles in order to see the channels. But if you don't see all of the channels, you need to go into channels and roles and choose the ones that you want to see. The other thing about that is we have a new notification role. So I used to do, and I'll do it like maybe once or twice a month, and at everyone in the Discord for notifications instead of, and at everyone. But now we have roles. So this morning I did a notification to coding notifications, and if you have self-assigned the role right here, you'll get that ping when I go live. So be sure to click on channels and roles to choose all your stuffs. Yeah. Can I see both chats in one place? Yeah, so this, wait, I don't have a way for you to see both chats in one place. The only way is to see it on my screen. That's really the only way. Yeah. What's the best way to implement data filtering in Angular? I'm pretty sure they have a directive for that. I don't have a lot of experience with Angular though. And actually, let's do this. So we're gonna get to answering questions when we talk about the Discord. I realize we've been live for what 30 minutes already. I haven't done anything, but the Vox works on YouTube. So if you have a question that you would like me to answer in about 20 to 30 minutes, in either the Twitch chat or the YouTube chat, do !ask with your question. So both Lucas and who else? Liam Stevens, who has a question, do !ask followed by your question, and then it'll show up on this website, and I won't lose it. There's more info on that here. Let's see if that works. Yeah. Yeah, it's working. It's working. Great. So yeah, if you have a question, do it here so I don't lose those. All right, I think we're mostly caught up. If I missed anything, feel free to say it again. And if you asked a question that I missed, feel free to do !ask so that I don't lose it. Let's talk about the Discord and about the Coding Garden community. If you're here right now, I would consider you a member of the Coding Garden community. I think one of the things that really drew people to Coding Garden early on when I started this YouTube channel and live streaming on YouTube is the community aspect. There's a lot of interaction, as you've seen, and thank you, Andrew. Thank you for becoming a member. I appreciate that. So yeah, there's a lot of interaction in terms of I try to read your chat messages, I try to respond, I give you my opinions, you can share your opinions, those kinds of things. And then we also have the Discord, which is kind of an extension of the live stream. So the Discord is here all the time. I'm not live streaming all the time, but the Discord is here all the time. And so I will say for a very long time, the Discord was kind of neglected. Like I didn't pay a lot of attention to it, but part of revamping the channel and fostering a community is I'm going to make sure that we're more active in the Discord and we have more things to do in the Discord. So if you are not a member of the Discord, if you go to coding.garden/discord, it has instructions on how to join. And I'll mention really quick, if you're already in the Discord, but it's been a while, make sure that you check this right here, channels and roles. I talked about this a second ago, but this is where you can self-assign notification roles. So I've been doing a lot of different kinds of streams, and some people only want to see coding streams. Some people like to see my IRL streams, or some people like to see my music making streams. So instead of doing at everyone every time I go live, I now am going to call out a specific role. So if you go here and you choose you can choose multiple of these 5 different roles. Those are the roles I'm going to use to ping whenever I go live. So when I go live for a coding stream like I'm doing right now, I will do at coding notifications. And if you click that button, you'll get that role and you'll hear about it. I am going to be doing some IRL streams, and my plan is to do that over on my personal Twitch channel, W3CJ. So I'm going to be streaming on both YouTube and Twitch, but Twitch streams will specifically be non-coding related, and they're going to be on my personal channel. So if you want to follow for that, definitely go check out my personal Twitch channel. And we'll do a shout out over here. So go check out my personal Twitch channel. And if you want to get notified when I go live on my personal Twitch channel, you'll probably choose these ones that are not coding. Because probably this week, I'll do some unannounced IRL streams, which is basically just me walking around. If you're interested in what that is like, if you look on the W3CJ channel, there are some VODs of various IRL streams that I've done before. And so like this is one where I was walking around the Cinco de Mayo festival in Denver, Colorado. So it's just various things like that. I've gone on hikes. I've done things like visiting various events in Denver, and I kind of just walk around and talk to the chat while I'm doing it. Yeah, I have an invisible cuff. And so like, yeah, on this one, this stream was rough because we lost signal a lot, but I did some geocaching live on stream. And what else? Yeah, this was a really fun one where I hiked up a mountain called Green Mountain and just talked to chat while I was on my hike. But I got some really, so this is a view from the top. There's 360 views from the top. So yeah, if you're interested in IRL streams or things that are not code, follow W3CJ, click that button in the Discord. And yeah. And so I want to stream Meowwolf. I have no idea how the signal is going to be, but it would be fun to do at some point. Yeah, I have a dog. That's another IRL stream that I did a while back. I don't know if I did that on the W3CJ channel or if I did it on the Coding Garden channel. Let's see. No, I think I did it on the Coding Garden channel, and I don't even know if that VOD is available. Let's see honestly, because so I took my dog for a walk, and I did an IRL stream, while we were on the walk. Is this all of them? Yeah, cause so there's some other IRL streams that I did on the Coding Garden channel, but like I said, we're gonna do it on my personal channel now. But actually, let me find that VOD and make it public, because then you can watch it. Give me a second. But yes, I do have a dog. To answer the question, do I have pets? I have a dog. He's a Saint Bernard, and I took him on a walk once. Yeah, so there was a Pokemon Go event I've never done a Pokemon Go IRL stream, but when I do my daily stand-up, I'll tell you about my Pokemon Go event. I got so this is somewhat unrelated to the Pokemon Go event. It was just a research task that I took a really long time to complete, but I got a shiny Gyarados yesterday. While I was playing the Pokemon Go event. So that's a thing. And what's up, Stony? Welcome in. Would have been before that. I don't think I have any cards to open, but I'm not opposed to it. Let's see. What's up, Zaid? Welcome in. Yeah, honestly, I should get my friend code out there. I don't have enough friends because right now I have, if you remember, not remember, what am I saying? If you play Pokemon Go, there was a task during the Kanto Pokemon Go Fest. I think it was Pokemon Go Fest. Maybe it was just a community day. But there's a task where you need to send 151 gifts, and I've only sent like 46 so far. like there are many more gifts that I need to send, and it would be great to get some more friends. I think I have like only like 4 or 5 friends in the Pokemon Go app. Does the Panzer command have the link to the VOD? I thought it did. Oh, I see. I published it to YouTube. It's just unlisted. Okay. Never mind then. Okay, so I digress. If you want to see me and my dog, there's a link in the chat right now. It's this VOD on YouTube on the archive channel. I took him for a while. Let's see if we can get a good shot of him. Yeah, that's him. It was like in the fall, and we went for a walk. It's unlisted on the archive channel. I don't know why. I guess I don't want that to be mixed in with all of the coding content. But if you're interested in it, the link is in the chat. What's up, Jaicom? Welcome in. Yeah, and then the link is in the Twitch chat too. Okay, let's keep moving. Like I said, and just to reiterate, if it's been a while since you've been in the Discord, make sure to self-assign these roles, and then also there are roles, not roles, there are things you can choose in order to view specific channels. So we have community channels, discussion channels, off-topic channels, and if you don't see those in the sidebar, you'll need to click one of these buttons to make sure that you see them. And then similarly, if you are a supporter, you'll need to make sure that you click this in order to see the supporters only channel. So I try to pay more attention to the supporters channel. And if I ever do like supporters only live streams, the link will be put in the supporters channel. So be sure to check that. All right, in terms of discussion channels, we now have daily stand-up. Yeah, and so if you are a YouTube member, link your YouTube account to your Discord account. If you're a Twitch sub, link your Twitch account to your Discord account. If you're a patron, link it. And that's what will, the linking of those will give you automatic access to the supporters channel. Yeah. Did I miss anything else? Someone should do an exclamation mark ask with what is your Pokemon Go friend code so that I don't forget to do it. But somebody do that. Yeah, and then Yardan, if you have a question, do exclamation mark ask so we don't lose it. So if you do exclamation mark ask followed by your question, it's going to show up on this website. And I'll start answering those questions. Red asks, when is the next coding stream? Right now. Right. I mean, like, I'm going to answer code questions and write some code in like 5-10 minutes. We're just talking about community stuff and then we'll get to it. But yeah, so if you're in the Discord, we now have this daily stand-up channel. Is there a limit on number of friends? Oh, maybe there is. Okay, so I'll choose wisely, I guess. But yeah, we have this daily stand-up channel, and the idea is every day you go in here and you say, what did you do yesterday? What are you going to do today? And what blockers do you have? Now, it may or may not start a conversation, but the idea is you are getting visibility into the community. Like, you can just scroll this channel and see some of the regulars that are pretty often in the Twitch chat, and you can see them talk about what they're doing. You can see them talking about currently being in code school, or people talking about actual dev jobs that they have and stuff like that. So the whole point of this channel is just to get visibility. And then if you see an interesting stand-up message that you want to reply to or talk about, feel free. So I'm going to do my stand-up message now. I encourage anyone else that wants to do this to go ahead and do it in the channel now. But here we go. And so I'm not going to be posting on the weekends. Like, I'm going to take time off on the weekend. So I didn't post Saturday or Sunday, but I'm going to be posting today. So I'll say, this weekend, I played Pokemon Go for GoFest. I worked on my house. I'm filling holes and sanding before painting. So there's a part of my house that my wife and I have been working on to get basically ready for paint and stuff. Pokemon Rust is better? That's funny. What else did I do? I went on a long walk with Panzer. I'll say the weather was in the 70s Fahrenheit, which is what in Celsius? 21 C. So Panzer has a really hard time in the summer because he's a big dog and he's very fluffy and he gets hot. So he can't walk very far in the summer. But this weekend, it was chill. It felt like it was already fall. It was great. And because of that, he got to go on a really long walk because he didn't get exhausted as quickly. Cool. So yeah, went on a long walk with Panzer, and that's about it. Today I sent a community update email. I'll mention really quick, if you're not on the mailing list, then you should be. If you go to, list.coding.garden, you can sign up for the mailing list. And I'm going to try and get back in the habit of doing one weekly news and update message. So that'll tell you what we did on Coding Garden last week. It'll link to the streams, talk about what we're going to do this week. And I forgot to add a weekly challenge, but we'll start that next week, or maybe we'll start that tomorrow. But if you want to receive weekly challenges in your email, sign up for the mailing list here. You can check it out over there. And yeah, so do that. So I sent a community update email, fixed the YouTube chatbot, and am streaming on YouTube. No blockers. Okay, that's my daily stand-up. I'm gonna try to do it every day. And one thing, if we answer all the questions that people have, and I have time today, I'm gonna work on a Discord bot. So the idea is there will be other roles you can self-assign to say the range of what time zone you're in. And then if you assign that role once a day, it'll ping you to say, hey, it's time to do your daily stand-up. So like I said, if you haven't done this and you're in the Discord, I encourage you to do it. This will give us visibility into who you are, what you're doing. And then also the other aspect of this is if you're self-learning. So if you're like teaching yourself to code, this is a nice way to keep yourself accountable, right? Because if you don't really have a class to go to or any sort of specific plan that you've been given, if you post in here, you can try and keep yourself accountable, right? You can say, this is what I plan to do. This is what I worked on. And so if you do this every day, it'll help keep yourself accountable. Discord has a commands functionality. Oh, so we could do like slash commands. Yeah. Let's do that. Okay, the other channel in the Discord is called Weekly Discussion, and we're going to post one discussion topic every week that you can respond to. So right now, the discussion topic for this week is there's a trend to move apps, logic, and rendering back to the backend. Things like React Server components, meta frameworks that include server-side rendering, frameworks like HTMX. What do you think of this? Is it a good trend? Is it a bad trend? Do you not care? Let us know. So if you have opinions on this, come over to the discussion channel. There's some really good insights. I think like one of the aspects of the Coding Garden community is there are people from all different backgrounds and of all types of experience. So like you have some people that are like, I used to do PHP and this is very similar to that. And like, I love it. And I think, and so JICOM has some really good insights here because they've been around for a long time. So they've been programming since the 70s. And so they have a lot of history and context around the shift of things from the back end to the front end or the front end to the back end. So there's a lot of good anecdotes in here. So feel free. So if you don't have any new opinions, feel free to like respond to somebody that's already given an opinion. You can do the reply option, or add your own take on it. So yeah, that's the discussion topic right now. We'll probably pick a new discussion topic on either Wednesday or Thursday. And if you have ideas for a future discussion topic, you can add them in here. So here's a thread. Just throw ideas for potential discussion topics, and on Wednesday or Thursday, we'll start up a new one. The other aspect of this is I might actually make a YouTube video out of it. It could be fun to talk about my opinions on it, share some of the community opinions. So if you share your opinion in here, you might actually make it into a YouTube video. Yeah. Yardan says Discord is chaos. I agree that some Discord servers can be chaos. We try to keep things somewhat organized though. I eventually got used to it. I think once I got used to the Discord UI, I love it so much more than Slack, because Slack is what a lot of communities used to use to stay in touch and chat. But I think once you get used to how Discord does things, it's pretty nice. So yeah. Well, links in YouTube chat don't work at all, and I don't know how to fix it. So they're basically just blocked by auto moderator. So if you share links in chat, nobody will see them, which is unfortunate. I personally don't like JavaScript for the backend, and that's okay. That's okay. That's an okay opinion to have. But yeah, I mean, this trend does seem to be something that's happening in the JavaScript ecosystem, right? Because if you're working in any other language, you're already potentially doing like server-side rendering or back-end coding. So yeah. Discord is slowly becoming the kitchen sink. Yeah, it's everything. They have everything. Well, and so right now, these are the main things that encourage discussion in the Discord. What I want to start doing, I need to talk to the mods first, so I'll have an announcement about this later this week or next week. I want to have community nights. So we could do things like movie night, where I won't be live streaming, but we'll have a channel that everybody can get into, and then a way of all watching the same video or movie at the same time without it being on stream. Like we can use something like Watch Together, or there's a few other websites where multiple people can all watch the same video at the same time. And then we can have movie nights. I think it would be really fun to watch Hackers on VHS. Well, not on VHS. I have it on VHS. Let me show you. Hackers. But it would be really fun to have a what is VHS? It's a type of media. But yeah, I have it on VHS. We wouldn't watch it on VHS. We would find a way where we can all watch it together, and then we would just have a channel in Discord where we can chat while we do it. But Hackers would be a fun one. I found this recently. It's called Webmaster. It's from I think there's a way to watch this one online too. What year is this from? I think this is from like 1999, but this is actually originally a movie from Norway, and then this is the English dubbed version, but it's all about hackers in like cyberspace. Um, yeah, and that's the other thing is like hackers is fine. It's not like it's not technically accurate, but it is fun. It is fun. So those are the kinds of things we could also do like a Mr. Robot watch party, which I think could be pretty fun. But I'm gonna figure out how we're gonna organize all of that, and I kind of want someone in the Discord to be like the dedicated community manager who keeps track of all of that and makes sure that we actually do weekly events and stuff like that. Yeah. So yeah, movie night could be fun. The last thing is if you see something interesting on stream, clip it and then share it in this channel. Yeah, I think we want to have like a group of people that can all say like we are the community focused people and do things like movie night and come up with other kinds of events. Like it also could be interesting to like, so we have this daily stand-up channel, but what if we have a channel where you post a picture of what you're doing today? So it's like one photo that describes what you're doing. Yeah, basically like a party planning committee. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not going to scold you that you didn't clip anything, but oh yeah, quiz night. Well, that's the other thing. Eventually, I want to do like a game show production. I want to do Dev Jeopardy. So I've done Dev Jeopardy in the past. If you look on my channel, I actually did this for a conference that happened here in Denver. Jeopardy. I built the buzzer buttons live on stream, and then I also coded up the app live on stream, and then at the conference, we actually had Jeopardy contestants, and then I ran the show. But it would be really fun to do this live, and then I would want to rebuild the whole thing because I would rebuild it so that chat could participate. We could basically get 3 random people from chat. They could all be the contestants, and then they would have a web page where they can buzz in, like in real time. And they could like be on a Discord call or something like that. But it would be really fun to do like a full production of Dev Jeopardy at some point. Okay, but yeah, you can do clips. So yeah, I think it's actually possible to clip things on YouTube now. Thank you, Dr. Phantom. Are you talking about that old video? Like, isn't there, maybe you can only do it on videos that aren't live? Let's see, YouTube has a clipping feature. Maybe you have to wait until it's not live anymore? How do you clip? Josh made a clip. Oh. Yeah, I think it's actually possible to clip things on YouTube now. All right, so Josh figured it out. It's right side of the share button. Things on YouTube now. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you click these 3 dots, and then click clip, and then you can choose a section of the video to create a clip for, and then share it in the Discord. Yeah. And you can choose the specific time. I think it can be max 1 minute. But you can choose 1 minute to clip, and then that will create a clip link. Yeah. Cool. So if you have a clip, share it in this thread here, and then at the end of every month, we're going to do a roundup of all the clips that were created that month. Cool. I think that's all I had to say about community. Anybody have anything else we should talk about? You don't have a clip next to share? Let me make sure I I think if I disable my extension, does it still work? I don't have clip next to share. It could be these three dots. I don't know if it has to do with like the size of your screen either, but click that, then that, but it has to be the three dots. So yeah, I don't know. That's the other thing. Yeah, if I do something funny, that's fun to clip too. Funny, interesting, all that good stuff. All right, that's it for community updates. Let me plug a few things, and then we'll answer some questions that you might have. So I already mentioned it, but we're going to talk about it again. Join the mailing list. This is how we can stay in touch. I send go live notifications. I send weekly updates. And soon I'll also be sending weekly challenges. So that's the other thing, that the channel isn't active right now, but it will be active soon, is the weekly challenge channel. We'll essentially release one code kata that everybody can try doing, or one front end mentor challenge, or a CSS battle or something like that. And then everyone will get a chance to try it, and then they can post their solutions here. So if you're interested in that, sign up for the mailing list to stay in touch with all that stuff. Yes. All right. And I think that's it. I'll wait like 2 minutes to see if anybody has anything else to say about community or the discussion channels or anything like that. And then we'll start answering some code questions. SE May, yeah, I missed this earlier, SE May. I'm reading now. So I went to channels and roles, and the last one is, would you like to join supporter only channels? Yeah, I think I could be a little bit more clear about that, because yeah, you're not going to be able to see them unless you have the specific, unless you've already linked your Twitch, YouTube, or Patreon account, and you are a subscriber of those. Yeah, so I have this here. You must have your accounts linked. I could update the wording. I'm not opposed to updating the wording that says like you must have you must be a paying user. Because yeah, if you click that link, you're not going to see the channels unless you actually have those supporter roles. Yeah. What's up, Sanjay? Welcome in. I'll send a message in the VIP channel, so that way mods can respond too. Because I think anybody that is a VIP also is a candidate for like helping host community events and stuff like that. But my plan is to do that after the stream today. All right, let me see if there's any mod messages I should look at, and then we'll get going. Oh, sorry, Acid Spark. If you're watching the VOD, sorry you can't tune in. I see what you're saying, SC May. Yeah, I agree with that. So like they're linked, but you also have to be a paying member. Yeah. Cool. Cool. Let me see if I can update that right now. Onboarding. There we go. I updated the wording. Or not. It won't let me save it. Does YouTube reward you with anything extra if I'm a premium member watching your streams? I think that just has to do with ad revenue. So if you have YouTube Premium and you watch, I get specifically like you don't watch ads, but I still get the ad revenue as if you had watched ads. There we go. It's up to date. It's updated now. All right, I'm gonna close the Discord for now, and we're gonna start answering some questions. But I will take like a 1-minute break before we answer the questions. But if you're just joining us, you're right on time. We got rid of we finished all of the administrivia and everything else. And now we're going to start answering some code questions. Yeah, so Yardan, if you have a question, make sure you do !ask, and then it will show up on this website, vox.coding.garden. So do !ask followed by your question, and then it'll show up here so I don't lose it. I'm going to take a 1-minute break, and then we're going to start answering questions when I get back. Here we go. Here we go on the break. I'll be right back. All right, we're back. Let's answer some questions. Well, is that right? Yeah, that's right. Okay. Are you asking something? So if you go to vox.coding.garden, you can see if your question shows up here, you have asked something. Yeah, and I think that's something for the future as well. Andrew, is we should add 7TV, BTTV emotes to YouTube chat. Honestly, that's a whole other project that I want to do, because at that point I would want to build my own chat client for YouTube. Like, you can log in, actually send messages in the YouTube chat, but it'll have a UI that looks more similar to like Twitch chat. Yeah. And Jicom, thank you for the tier 1. Appreciate you. No need to ask questions on Discord. Just make sure you do !ask followed by the. So for example, if I have a question like, who are you? I would do in the YouTube chat, I would do !ask followed by my question, and then that will pop up here like this, and then I won't lose it. It's going to stay on here. The BTTV extension supports YouTube? Oh, well, I use the Franker Faces extension. Yeah. It is !comment followed by the question number followed by your comment in order to reply. Yeah. Where do I build my case against adding custom extension emotes to the channel? What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Is it that you don't use the extension and you don't want to see them? Yeah. Okay. If you have asked a question, so there are 20 questions asked today. If you've asked a question, type !! here in the chat, and I will see that you are here right now, and I will only answer questions from people that are here right now. What did you end up doing, Ryan? No, comment. Yeah, you want to do comment number than that. Yeah. No worries. I'll delete this and then you can try again as a comment. Dr. Phantom has the question, what is YouTube? YouTube is the main website on the internet, pretty much, for uploading videos. So it's where I upload my videos. It's also where I live stream. They have all kinds of things. They have coding content like mine. There's also other types of entertaining content that's not just coding. Yeah, YouTube is the premier video website on the internet. Thank you for your question, Dr. Phantom. Why am I? I don't know. I woke up with a feeling that I should do what I do. So we're going to keep doing it. Yeah. Oh yeah. So Fob is asking, they want basically like, they want to set up the, does this not pin them? Maybe it doesn't, maybe I'm not able to pin YouTube ones, but this is an error you will get if you're trying to set up the Coding Garden API. So, specifically my chat overlay and like pulling in YouTube chats and everything works with this thing, but this thing expects you to have the YouTube operational API running on the same computer. So this is a service that someone wrote where it basically proxies requests to the YouTube API. So you'll need to get this running, spin it up with Docker, and then set the API key inside of it. So you'll need to set that repo up. And then once you have it set up, YouTube operational API endpoint should be set to wherever that's running from. So once you start this up, it'll be localhost port something, whatever the port is, 8080 or whatever the updated port is. And that's what it'll make the request through. But you will need to go in and if you look at their docs, there's a way of setting a file with an API key, and that's where all of the YouTube requests are made through. So yeah, hopefully that helps, Fob. You basically just need to set that repo up. Okay. Is Panzer a good boy? Yes, he is. We'll bring him up again, but Panzer is my dog. And he is a Saint Bernard. He has an Instagram, so follow his Instagram if you have not. This is my dog. I love him. And he is a good boy. He's a very good boy. He also made an appearance one time on stream. I'll show you this clip really quick. He's a purebred good boy. Yeah, it's funny to say purebred, though, because, like, technically St. Bernards have had other breeds. Even if it's labeled as purebred, they might actually have Mastiff and also Bernese mountain dogs in their bloodline, because at a certain point they needed that. But yeah, here he is. Oh, there's a dog. Everybody want to see the dog? Come here, bud. Come here. Come here. Oh, buddy. This is Panzer. Can you sit for me? Sit. 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 Oh, good boy. Good boy. Can you touch? Touch. Oh, good boy. Good boy. He's a good boy. Okay. He is a good boy. All right, let's get to some coding questions. Oh, but actually, yeah. So that's where the pixel art came from. If you've seen, well, not where it came from, but that's why he's in the pixel art. Let me show that really quick. I think I'll be muted for a second. But if you've seen this pixel art, we were playing. So that clip, we were playing Jackbox Party Pack on stream. But yeah, look at this. So that pixel art is him in it. But yeah, follow his Instagram. But that actually reminds me, I created my own Instagram. So if you want to follow my Instagram, where I've been posting, I don't know what you would call these, like artistic, interesting points of view. And Zinka, you're very welcome. Welcome in. I feel like, well, actually, you won't be able to hear me unless you're watching on YouTube. I don't know if you're watching on YouTube or not, but you're very welcome. And yeah, of course. But actually, so I really liked this one. I made this one yesterday. Um, Actually, I don't want I don't want copyright notices, so I shouldn't play the music. But basically, my Instagram is going to be me posting interesting artistic videos from my point of view. This is me skateboarding, my point of view skateboarding. This is a art installation at one of the parks that I typically go to. It's like it's where a house used to be, and then it has like these mirrors that are like reflections and stuff. Um, this is in Garden of the Gods, which is a park here in Colorado. Um, Here's just an interesting photo. Not necessarily a trip, but it's like it's like me taking interesting photos and videos that I've done and then presenting them in an interesting way that I think you might find interesting. So I got one new follower. Thank you for that. So if you want to follow my Instagram, check it out over there. Yeah, let's answer some code questions. Yeah, so I think we answered that. If you asked a question in the chat, type exclamation mark here. Those questions will bubble up. Yardan, I think, is having a hard time asking the questions. I'll help you out, Yardan. Let me do it so you don't have to keep redoing it. It's like this: ask from Yardan, like that. Wait. Oh, because I'm over the limit. Yeah, I guess that's the other issue is you have to be within the 200 character limit for it to show up. All right. Let's answer a code one just so that we can write some code because this is the coding garden. So this one comes from Liam Stevens, who says, in JavaScript, when would you prefer the more efficient reduce function over multiple iterations with map, filter, and sort? Only when array data is large? This is a good question, and let's write some examples to talk about what Liam is talking about here. I think that's what I'm going for, Waleed. It's like nostalgic views. I've been on a nostalgia kick lately, which is why I also have like a lot of VHS tapes. Nostalgia is a thing for sure. All right, we'll create a folder for array reduce versus multiple iteration. Cool. I'm going to use TypeScript in here just because I want to be able to have types, I guess, and have type completion. But let me show you a really easy way to set up a TypeScript project without needing a bunch of stuff. So I'm going to init this folder with npm. That gives me a package.json, and then I'm going to install tsx, which is TypeScript execute as a dev dependency, and that's literally all I need now. So now in this folder, I've got a package.json with a dependency on tsx, and then for the start script, I can literally just do tsx index.ts. And now that will run the file. So if I, without needing a build step or anything like that. So if I have a console log, hello world, it's inside of this TypeScript file. Now, if I do npm start, it's going to run tsx against that file, spit out hello world. Yeah, I could also use Dino. You're right, but I don't know. I don't know. Clip it? Yeah, somebody should make a clip. Okay, so now that we have this file, let's actually try to answer Liam Stevens' question here. So you can watch the file, so you could combine potentially TSX with NodeMon if you wanted to, but I don't know if TSX also might have a watch mode. I'm not going to do that now, but that's probably possible. Okay, so Liam Stevens has the question, in JavaScript, when would you prefer the more efficient reduce function over multiple iterations with map, filter, and sort? It really, sort wouldn't come into play here because it's hard to do a sort in a reduce, but really like map, filter, really map and filter you see chained a lot. But let's come up with an example to demonstrate what they're talking about here. So let's say we have like numbers. Maybe I can find an example with this, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then so yeah, sorting would typically come after anyways. I think like technically speaking, you could write a reduce that does an insert into a sorted array to keep it sorted. But I think that's too complex. I think running a sort algorithm is totally fine. Okay, so let's say I have this array of numbers, and then let's say I want the even numbers, right? So you might do something like numbers dot filter. We get each number, and you want any number where number modulus 2 is equal to 0. Right, so this would give you the even numbers. Let's confirm that that is the case. Let's log these out. So if we run this, now we only get the even numbers from that array, 2, 4, 6, 8. But let's say I also want, I don't know, not only, now I want to take my even numbers. What else do I want to do with this? Help me come up with like a decent example of chaining like filter. And actually, let's say we want like doubled, let's do this. So we'll do a filter and then a map. So doubled even numbers. And so we'll do even numbers.map. We'll get each number, and we will multiply it by 2. And so now, if we log this, we should see only the even numbers, but then multiplied by 2. So instead of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, we should see 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. Yeah, okay. Now, typically, you might actually write it like this. I'm going to put these, I'm going to keep those so we don't lose that, but you might say something like results are filter, and then after you've filtered, map it like this. Okay, you probably have seen a lot of code like this in some kind of React code base or any other JavaScript code base where you have an array and then you want to do multiple things to it. You filter it, and then you map it, and then maybe you filter it again, etc. This may not be the best example, but really what we want to illustrate here is you have some input array, and you want to do higher order methods on it, like filter or map. Now, to get to Liam's question, we're talking about efficiency here. And so one thing that you may not consider when you chain a bunch of methods like this is the amount of iteration that needs to happen. So this is technically 2 iterations of the array. Now, the second iteration is not, it doesn't have to go as many times because we're technically iterating over the filtered result. So it's like in divided by 2, which is still technically in. So like if we're looking at the big O of this would be like 2 in, which would be simplified to in. So it's still technically big O of in, but you have a bunch of you have multiple iteration here. To really make this the worst case though is like you could map it first and then filter it. So think about it like this. This one line of code, this map, has to run for every value in the array, right? So it has to go 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 2 is 6, 4 times 2 is 8, 5 times 2 is 10, 6 times 2 is 12, 7 times 2 is 14, 8 times 2 is 16, 9 times 2 is 18, 10 times 2 is 20. Thank you, Zelina. And so after this line of code runs, we now have a new array with all of those doubled numbers. And so we had to touch every single number in the array to now get that result. And now we're then piping that through filter. And filter is, again, going to have to look at every single result. So it's going to have to look at 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, it's going to have to look at every one of those and run this calculation. So their question is, when would you prefer doing this versus doing it all in a single iteration? So if we really wanted to optimize this, is it Liam Stevens? it might be I am Stevens. I don't know if it's an I or no. But so if we didn't want to do this in 2 iterations of the array, we could do it in a single reduce, right? So let's actually write this as a reduce. And so if we say numbers.reduce, this is going to give us back, we'll call it the results, and then we get each number in the array. And then we can do something with it. And then our reduce accumulator starts off as an empty array. So basically what I want to do is a single iteration that both maps and filters as we go. So what we could do here is we can move this comparison into the reduce. And we can say if the num mod2 is equal to 0, then we'll say results.push number times 2, right? So I've essentially combined the map and the filter so that way I only have to do the double calculation of things that are actually even. And then because this is my reduce, I'll return the array here. And then TypeScript is complaining is because we didn't tell it that this can be a number array like that. I think, do I have to use the generic version? How do I type this? Can I not do that? Yeah, type assertion. That's the way to go. I like that. Thank you. Thank you, Waleed and Andrew. Okay, and so we'll comment this one out. This does the same thing as this, but it does it in a single iteration. So we only have to iterate over the array once and all in one go. Yeah, so that's what we're talking about right now, Linux Hopper is. I mean, technically, yes, you don't necessarily have... here's the thing. If you're new to reduce, let me show you how we would do this with really even... I can show you with a for each, and then I'll show you how that would be a for loop. So basically what we do is this. And then we don't need this. And then we'll take a quick stretch. So we'll tell it that results is a number array. And then our for each runs here. And then whenever we log results. So if you're new to reduce, this code might be a little bit easier to look at. So we have the starting array, and actually we don't need the return here for the for each. So we have the accumulator, the thing that we're building up. We then iterate over some array and do something, and in this case we're building up that accumulator, and then after the loop is done, we're done. So these several lines of code here are functionally equivalent to this reduce. It's just written in a more combined way. So basically with the reduce, we specify our accumulator as the second argument to the function, and that is essentially our accumulator that we're initializing here. And then inside the function, the accumulator is always that thing. It's always the thing that we return from the function. So that's why we have this return here. Is on every iteration, we want to return that array so that it can be used in the next iteration. And then on the last iteration, it gets returns, and so that's what gives us access to it out here. In terms of efficiency, both of these are functionally equivalent. Like the number of calculations that need to happen for this version versus this version, they're functionally equivalent. What I would argue is this is possibly harder to read if you have more beginners on your team or more people that aren't used to reduce. Which is what we're getting at in a second. But I'll also show you the other way that you can write this is you don't need a for each or a reduce. You could write this with a for loop, right? So if I instead had a for loop that iterated over the numbers, we could do this. Yeah, basically, if you use reduce, you're a show off. You're just not necessarily. And we'll get into that because that's really what this question is getting down to. Is when would you use one over the other? So if you know nothing about for each or reduce, it might be easier to understand this code, which is doing exactly the same thing. So we have our accumulator. We then iterate over the array. We grab each number from that array, we do our calculation, we push it into the array if it's correct, and then at the end of it all, we have the combined result. So really, this is kind of like order of difficulty, like especially like when you're learning to code maybe, or the way that you would learn these. I would say learn the for loop first. If you don't understand this code, there's no way in heck you're going to be able to understand this code, right? So you need to, the most optimal solution is to never iterate, or to never write any code. But you need to be able to understand what this code does first before you can understand a reduce. So if you don't understand this code, I would start here. But then again, this is functionally equivalent to the for each. So instead of manually writing out the for loop, the for each lets us basically just iterate over the array. It automatically gives us that num variable. The thing is, I don't want to do a benchmark because I don't care. Because my point is going to be, for simple problems like this, you actually shouldn't really care that much about efficiency. It should be more about code readability and code communication on your team. So yeah, of all of these solutions, some people, I mean, honestly, the for each one, I feel like most people could understand. Like, you don't even have to be a JavaScript developer to say, oh, well, I kind of get what that code is doing. Whereas there are programmers that have been programming for years. They're programmers with 10, 20 years of experience that would have to stare at this piece of code much longer to even determine what this piece of code is doing. Yeah. So this gets to the question. Would I prefer more efficient reduce over multiple iterations, only when the array data is large? So that's really what Liam Stevens is asking is, all right, we see code like this all the time with chained mapped and filters, right? So you map it and then you filter it and then maybe you map it again. Like when you chain these, technically it has to iterate every single time. And so really the question is it okay if I do this? Or should I prefer doing a reduce? Or really, even if you don't do a reduce, then maybe even like a for each or a for loop, because that does it in a single iteration. I think the other aspect of code communication is if you write this as a for loop, you can clearly see that there is a single iteration, right? When I look at this code, I know that it's iterating over the array once and it's doing the work once. When I look at this, I think it's deceivingly simple. Like it deceivingly makes you think that maybe there's only a single iteration. But really, if you understand what's happening with this code, it's actually multiple iterations. Like every time you have a map, every time you have a filter, it's another iteration of that array or that array result. And so that's really what we're comparing here. So what's my preference? Honestly, if it's a tiny little array like this, like maybe less than a few thousand elements, this is probably fine. Like you're not going to run into any major slowdowns or issues in like a front end app or even a back end app if you do this, right? It's kind of like inconsequential. So yeah, but once you have more data and potentially if let's say this is running inside of back end code, right? This in a node.js application is technically blocking code. So if this array of numbers was of length 10,000, like maybe it's some result that you got back from a database and you got back 10,000 results, this is going to be a much slower request handler than something that did it in a single iteration. And that's something to consider, because if this is running in let's say it's running in Node.js, it's in a backend function, that's blocking. It's a single thread that has to do the map and the filter over thousands and thousands of elements. So in backend code, I probably would much more prefer like the for each or the reduce, just because you potentially don't know how many results you're going to be getting back from a database query, unless you're doing like a limit and an offset or something like that. But yeah, so just to sum things up, my opinion is in front end code, it's probably fine to do this. It's probably fine. You're not going to really run into too many slowdowns or performance issues if you do this in front end code. However, if everyone on your team understands reduce and is familiar with working with reduce, you might prefer to do it like this, because basically this combines it all into one. If everyone's on the same page, they all understand the code, good to go. But I would argue that there are more people that don't understand reduce than do. So potentially onboarding people onto your team into this code base might be harder because they don't necessarily understand reduce, or they're not used to using it. Yeah, you could use something like web workers. You could but that's getting to more and more optimization, right? So if you have front end code that's doing this and you decide, hey, we're going to push this to a background thread with a worker to get back the result, you might as well just do it in a single iteration because it's going to be much faster anyways. I don't know. Is the map always needed? Can't you do it all with a filter? You can't, because so a filter returns a Boolean. So this is the verbose way of writing that out. Let me keep both. So what's really happening in this filter is we are returning true or false depending on which one we want to keep. So there is no way for us to return like num times 2 here. You can't do that. We'll lose that. Yeah. So you lose the number times 2 with the filter, which is why we have to, we have to combine filter with map. Yeah. You can do it with a single flat map. I am not familiar with flat map. Let's look at it. Yeah, what's up, Codex? Welcome in. And Lenny says, that's why I love Rust. Iterators are just abstraction layers, and chained operations like map filter basically disappear in the compiled and optimized machine code. That's fascinating to think about. Like, and really that kind of plays into like thinking about like, even though the code looks like this, if you're coming to JavaScript as a Rust programmer, you might think that this is more optimal, and you may not realize that there technically is an optimizer, but as far as I know, it's not smart enough to optimize a map and a filter into a single iteration. Maybe it does. I don't know enough about like low-level execution of JavaScript code inside of a JavaScript engine. But basically what Lenny is saying is, in Rust, you write code that kind of looks like this, and when it compiles, it actually optimizes it to something like this. But you don't have to write code like this. It just optimizes it to that. As far as I know, that doesn't really happen in JavaScript. It might. I don't know. That's out of my scope of understanding of JavaScript engines and execution. Everything Pro says, my dev manager was saying JavaScript is multi-threaded. Not quite. But the thing is, it can be. It's the thing. Like, you technically can spin up threads inside of a node.js process. However, the main thread is always one thread. And if you open up another thread, you have to do very specific things to get things to communicate. But and basically what we mean is, if you spin up a backend Express app with Node.js, it is single threaded. If there are multiple requests coming into that app, it's only going to respond to one at a time. Unless you do something like use, what is it called? There's a way to spawn, not clustering? Clusters? Is it called clusters? There's a specific thing, yeah. So you can use the cluster module in Node.js to spin up the number of instances based on like the number of CPUs that you have. Yeah, so like let's say you have an Express app, single process, single thread. If you use the cluster module, which is built into Node.js, you can figure out how many CPUs do we have, and then create that many forks of the process. But by default, Node.js is not going to do that for you, which is why we say it's single-threaded. But there could be like things you're doing that are technically not happening on the main thread, like file reads and writes and network requests. Like those technically can happen on a background thread, and that's basically why Node.js is able to be as performant as it is. Like if you have a request handler written in Express that has a database query that it's awaiting, when that database query gets fired off, the execution of that function gets paused, which means the Express app can actually respond to other incoming requests while that database request is happening. But then when that database request comes back, now that request handler gets pushed into the queue, and it will then respond to that user. So like that's why Node.js apps can respond to thousands and thousands of incoming requests, but the way you write your code is all single thread, if that makes sense. I don't know. Yeah, and that's another point I didn't think about, Jaicom, is like it also depends on like how your team likes to write code when we're talking about this here, because like this is very imperative in that we define the array, we iterate, we push, like we're telling it exactly what to do. Whereas this is more functional programming, right? Like we don't have global variables. Everything is contained within that one function. And so if your team prefers to code that way, then yeah, you might prefer that one over the other, but yeah. All right, I probably missed a bunch of messages. We're going to look at flat map next. Is PHP single-threaded? Yeah. Oh, nice codecs. Yeah, I don't have a Steam Deck. I thought about getting one, but I just use a wireless keyboard. And that's why we can't save request-specific stuff in global variables. Yeah, because it's a single process. So if you put request-specific things in a global variable, now your requests are going to get data from other requests. Yeah, and so it's not spinning up another thread. It's spinning up another process, which is different than threads. But technically, like there is a module in Node.js that will let you spin up background threads. So that is a thing. But we are going to look at flat map next. How can I get into web dev? Every time I try, I just bail out, and I don't know why. It really, I guess it depends on what you want to do. Like, why do you want to get into web dev? Do you want to find a job? Do you want to build interesting things? Do you want to do both? I think you need to find like what are your motivators and then focus on those specific things. Because if you just pick a YouTube tutorial and start following it, but you don't have any intent, like what do I want to do with this stuff that I'm learning, then it's going to be harder for it to stick. Beginner tutorials never talk about load balancing. Is clustering related to that? In my experience, when we load balance, we do it outside of Node.js. Basically, every production Node.js app I've ever built I don't use the cluster module. It's always a single process. And then I have a load balancing server that sits in front of it that is able to spin up multiple servers, or let's say there are already multiple servers that are waiting, and the load balancer sends the requests accordingly. If you really wanted to, and you're trying to like optimize every bit of performance, or like trying to get every bit of possible compute out of the servers you have it deployed to, you technically could have a load balancer in front of a Node.js app that uses cluster. That seems like too much to me, though. Yeah, I think technically PM2 can also work with the cluster module to spin up things. Yeah, you got that right, Roga. That's how that works. Steam Deck? Oh, that's different. Not Stream Deck. Yeah. Concurrency is doing multiple things at once. Parallelism is doing the same thing multiple times at once. Yeah, so in this case, the cluster module is parallelism. Cool. All right, we talked about this for a long time, but in short, I prefer more readable code to efficiency. Now, obviously, if you are dealing with performance issues and your app is slow for your users, then you're going to want to do things that make things more efficient. But my preference is I want code to be nice, readable, and I want to be able to onboard new developers to that code much more quickly. And I think, honestly, like this code, a little bit easier to understand. Like even if you don't understand the performance implications, you can kind of, if you know what map and filter do, you know what this code is doing. Similarly here, like if you know how a for loop works, you know what this code is doing. If you do a reduce, there's going to be a large portion of people that don't understand what this code is doing. So that's what I'm getting at. I prefer more readable code instead of trying to optimize for efficiency ahead of time, with the caveat that there will be scenarios where you do need to optimize and be more efficient. But my default is to have things that are more readable. That is my answer. And we took a long time to answer it. And we also didn't talk about flat map. Oh, so if we use flat map, we could return undefined? Let's look at the flat map solution. So basically we do this. And then we return that. But here's the thing, will flat map remove empty values? So if we're returning undefined, does it remove those from the resulting array? That's what we want. And if it does, that's pretty flipping cool. It doesn't. So we need it to remove those undefined values. Because it's a filter. Oh, we have to do... And that's a good point, Jaicom. Yeah, don't confuse simplicity with familiarity, because I will argue that this is... return an empty array versus returning an array wow. I need to learn me some flat map. That's really cool. I like that. However, behind the scenes, flat map is technically doing map and then flat. So it is still at least 2 iterations, because it has to map it and then flatten it. So like, I would argue that this is also misleading because it looks like a single iteration, but behind the scenes, it's actually 2 iterations. I don't think I finished my thought here on simplicity versus familiarity, but like, this code is not simple. You can never convince me that this is simple code. I argue that you can become familiar with reduce and how reduce works, and after you've worked with it a lot, you can look at this code and fairly quickly, if you understand reduce, say, yes, I know what that code is doing. But it's not simple, and it never will be simple. But yeah. All right. Let's keep moving. Thank you for your question, Liam Stevens. That was some good conversation as well. So if you have a question in the chat, type exclamation. Well, if you've already asked a question, type exclamation mark here. And that will make your question bubble up. But yeah, I'll answer Yardon's question, who says, why do you need to flatten it when it's not a nested array? The whole point of it is to filter at the same time. So the idea here is, if we return an empty array, behind the scenes, when it flattens it, all those empty arrays are going to get removed. Because otherwise, if we return undefined, undefined shows up in the result. But we don't want that. We want those undefineds to be removed. So if we return an empty array, then those get flattened to be removed, which is what we want. So we're basically taking advantage of the fact of that it flattens and removes the empty arrays. That's why we're using that. Okay, this one comes from Muntahisa Fwan. Can you explain API fetching and stuff using only pure JavaScript, HTTP methods like get and post? I'm a beginner learning API, and I'm having a hard time about understanding what to use when. Sure, let's talk about it. And I will set a timer. Like, we won't talk about this for more than 15 minutes, just so we can get moving. We'll probably spend even less than 50. Honestly, let's do 10-minute timer to talk about this, and then we'll move on. Noob numbers? Come on. I mean, I don't think I'm going to use TypeScript for this. We'll just use JavaScript. All All right, they asked the question. So first of all, Git, we'll explain and talk about, and post, we'll explain and talk about. So Git is typically for retrieve information. Retrieve/request information. You typically are not sending anything. Typically, you are saying like, I want to get specific type of information. Now, and also the other thing to know is there is no body in the request. It's simply, as part of the HTTP specification, it is not possible to send a body in a GET request. A GET request only has like a URL, a method. That's all it has. It does not have a body. And we'll say typically used to retrieve or request information. Now, even though it can't have a body, some APIs will kind of abuse query parameters to actually send data in the request. We'll say it like this, like some APIs let you send data via query params. This is not recommended and typically bad practice. People always find a way, yeah. So the way that you can think about Git is you are writing code that is requesting information, and that is all. It's not sending any information, it's just requesting information. A post request is typically used to send information to a server. Yeah. Define yeah, so when I say abusive, I'm saying that they're abusing the fact that we can use query parameters. I'm not saying that they're like hacking the server or anything like that. I am saying they're using it for it, not its intended purpose. Does that help, Codex? Is that what you're saying? So yeah, a post request is typically used to send information to a server. We'll say has a body in the request. So the request body includes information that we're sending it over. Explain the intended purpose. Yeah. So okay, let's say this. Query params are used to typically used to filter requested data. I think this is what I mean by intended use. You maybe help me out if there's anything else, but typically you make the GET request. If it has no query parameters on it, like that's the default data that you're getting back. If the API allows you to specify query parameters, typically that filters down the type of data that you're getting to fall in line with the query parameters. But you're not sending data, you're just telling the API that you want data in a slightly different format, or like slightly filtered, is basically what we're saying. Do I only have 2 minutes left? No, I got 5 minutes. Look, time flies. Actually, time doesn't fly. Yeah, so I would say typically used for filtering. All right, so post is to send information to the server, has a request body, and I'll say this. Typically results in some change or mutation on the server. As in, if we'll create some exact examples of this. So like if I have a post request on my backend that is something like post slash to do, it can be inferred that when a post request is made there, a new to-do is going to be created on my backend, like in my database. And so that's the change that's happening here. There's some new thing getting created. Something is being mutated. Basically, our database is being mutated because we're putting something new into it. And in this case, the request body would be the new thing that I'm trying to create. Cool. I think the other thing I'll add is like these definitions are mostly in line with RESTful APIs. They are just how do we say this? I get what you're saying, Codex. But I still consider it yeah, you're not changing an existing thing. I guess you could say result in creation. And then we can differentiate that between put and patch. And I think again this gets down to like the original definition of like what REST is. But the reason I talk about it like this is because like I actually don't typically do traditional REST. Like I build REST APIs, but they would not adhere to the actual REST specification that's out there that originally came out. So these definitions are mostly in line with RESTful APIs. They are just guidelines and best practices. If we follow these, our APIs will be somewhat predictable. Is that fair to say? Yeah, and so like this is the other aspect is like standardizing on HTTP status codes, which is like even outside of this. So what your server responds with, the status codes should be standardized. Like you shouldn't send a 200 status code with an error. That should be some level of 400 or 500 status code. Yeah. Oh yeah, you're right, Pranyan. You can send data in headers too. Query params or headers. Yeah. What would be the best practice to get something that is for a specific thing which you look for it with an ID? It would still be a GET request, but we then use the URL that has the data inside of it as like the ID that we want, or a query parameter. The best practice is to put it in the URL params, not in the query params, but I'll show some examples in a second. Why is a REST API not HTTP? I think the best way to talk about that is just to show you that a REST API or REST has a very specific definition that we have gotten away from. So REST stands for representational state transfer, and there is actually a paper that was written that describes REST and all of these architectural principles. Like it has all of these aspects and architectural constraints. Like it's for client server architecture, it's stateless, it's cacheable, it's layered, it adheres to a uniform interface, and a REST API doesn't have to be just JSON. It could be any data format like HTML or XML. Like that's why we're differentiating those. So REST is a specification that describes how an API should work, and typically REST APIs will work over HTTP. Now, the reason I say that is because like when you can build an Express API that does not adhere to REST, but like sort of slightly adheres to it, but not all the way. And I'll show a quick example of that we're gonna add 5 minutes to the clock in the last 5 minutes here. Yeah, no one does it clean, but I would argue that there are things you can follow that are, that will make it somewhat predictable and clean. Does it really, Codex? I had no idea. Yeah, that's the good way to think about it, Yardan, is like, here we're describing how the backend should implement these things, and basically how the client should behave when it's interacting with them. Yeah, it's basically a way for the client and the server to communicate. Yeah. Which one do I prefer, Graph or REST? Because that's the other thing is like, technically, GraphQL doesn't adhere to this because with GraphQL, everything is a post request. It's just there's a different information in the body of the request that describes, are we requesting data or are we trying to mutate or change data? Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a good clarification too, Roga, is like API stands for application programming interface. In this context, we use API to mean web API. That is an API accessible over the web or accessible over HTTP. How do you spell accessible? There we go. So yeah, like especially if you're new to this stuff, we hear the term API thrown around a lot. API does not always mean web API, which is what we're talking about here. But typically we drop web or we drop web API or JSON API. Like we typically drop web or JSON and just call it an API. But I should clarify, we're talking about web APIs here because API is general. Like you can have an API anywhere. Like when we're talking about like React as a library, it has an API. That is, it has functions that are available to us, like use state, and it has other things like component and use effect. All of that is React's API. It's not a web API in that it's not accessible over HTTP. It's an API that can be used with JavaScript in the web browser, if that makes any sense. I think it's good to make that clarification, though. Vox is using Vue.js on the front end. Like this is written with Vue, and then the back end is using Feathers, and the database is MongoDB. Yeah. What's up, Steven? Welcome in. Okay, we have 1 minute left. I mean, 5 more, 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes. We're gonna build a quick little API to demonstrate this. So let's do it. I'm going to generate a little Express app. I have this command, create Express API. We won't use TypeScript for this. I feel like we're talking to beginners here, so we won't use TypeScript. But I'm going to generate an Express app to build an API to show you examples of these things from the backend perspective. One more turn. And so this is just going to generate a little Express API that we can start up, and it's going to listen on port 5000. So by default, when you make a GET request to the root of this server, it responds with this JSON object that has a message property. But let's look at the code to do that. So this is our Express app. It has a bunch of setup, but really what you should be looking at is this. So basically, if we're talking about all of this, if we're describing something with a GET request, right now inside of Express, I'm doing the backend portion of that. Like I am writing a server that is going to respond to incoming requests. So right now on the root, when we get a GET request, we're going to respond with this JSON object. But similarly, like we don't have to respond with JSON. We could respond with some HTML text. Like this. And then if I re-request this page, it actually renders out that HTML. So our server can respond with anything. Like it doesn't have to be JSON. It could be HTML. It could also be other things, or XML. It could respond with anything, but we are essentially responding to a GET request that comes in here. And a thing to note is our web browser is making that GET request. So I haven't written any client-side code to make this request. It's just happening in the web browser. So when you go to a website, when you type it in your URL bar and you click enter, that is making a GET request to the server. So that makes a GET request. Your browser receives the response and then renders out that response in some way. In this case, it's showing us the raw JSON data. But in the case of the server sending back HTML, your browser is smart enough to say, oh, well, I'm actually going to render that as like an H1 on the page. You're not going to see the data that got sent back. Like really, our server sent this back, but then the browser received it and then rendered it as an actual H1 on the page. What am I getting at? I don't know. Your browser makes GET requests. Let's make a quick little client that makes these requests so you can see that. Yeah, and plus a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, if you really want to see what's happening here, that's where the network tools come into play. So in your web browser, if you open up the DevTools and click on Network and then make your request, you can see what actually happens. So this is a GET request to this server running on localhost port 5000. And you can see that the browser actually sends a bunch of headers along with it. And because I use localhost for a lot of things, there's actually some cookies set. Let's get rid of all that stuff. Let's delete all our cookies. Just so you can see like a bare request that doesn't have anything. Yeah, so the browser sends all of these headers along with it that says, look, we'll take anything. We'll take HTML, XML, images, etc. It also sends along the user agent saying this is the thing that's making the request. In this case, it's saying that this is Firefox making that request. And there are no cookies. And you'll see that if you click the request tab, this shows you the request body. So earlier when I said GET requests don't have a body, that's what I mean is like you can't send data here. You can literally only have a URL and then headers and then possible query parameters, which will show. And then the server responds with something. And in this case, the server is literally just responding with that text, which the browser renders out here. All right, 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes. Because we want a client. So let's build a very simple example client with client-side JavaScript. Listen, it's only 5 minutes at a time, and I think it's keeping people engaged because they want to see what happens next. What happens next? All right, so I have this HTML page, and I want to add some client-side JavaScript that make a request to that backend. So I'm going to add a script tag here. And then I'm going to create a file called client.js. And so this is going to be the thing that makes the requests to the backend. So if I have a function here that says like get root message, and then I want to make a request to my backend, I'm going to make it async. I'm going to make a fetch. And then I want to do the same thing that the web browser is doing whenever it loads the page. Like I want to make a GET request here. So we have fetch that makes a GET request there. And then we can parse the response. We'll need to make sure that our server actually responds with JSON data. Well, here's the thing. The server that I have set up already has cores, so we don't have to worry about it. What are we doing? We're going back. We're going to make sure that it responds with JSON. Okay, so on the client side, we make the request, and then we should have access to it. So when this page loads, I'm going to call get root message. All right, so in order to load this web page that has the HTML and the JavaScript, I'm going to start up a separate server. This server only serves up these I think I have light server. Yeah. It only serves these up and actually runs the code. So you can see, especially if we look at the network tab. So when this page loads, it loads a bunch of stuff because I have auto refresh, but you'll see that there is a request here to localhost 5000. So I've written JavaScript code that actually makes the request here. It could be fun to, instead of just making the request, let's actually have a button that says load data. So we will not load the data until we click this button. So let's have a function, not a function, we'll have a button element. That'll be document.querySelector button. So give me the first button on the page. And then when that button is clicked, we are going to get the root message. So now, if we look at the network tab, the page loads. It has to load all of the resources for the page itself. But now when I click this button, that behind the scenes JavaScript makes a GET request to the server to get the data, and then I can do something with it. Now, to get back to your actual question, which was, Can I explain API fetching and stuff using pure JavaScript HTTP methods like get and post? I'm a beginner learning API and having a hard time understanding what to use when. Yeah, so if you're defining the API yourself, if it's just if the front end is just requesting data, you want to get request. A post request would be that you're sending data and you want to use the data in the body. So like, let's say there's a backend route called to do, and this actually receives data from the client. And inside of Express, that's inside of this thing called rec.body. So the body of the request is what the client side sent. In this case, we're just going to send it right back. Basically, the client sends us some data, and then we send that data right back to it. Let's be a bit more meta about it. We could say message client sent this data. And then we'd have a data property that is rec.body. Okay, so now let's write some client-side code that actually calls this endpoint. And this is where we're going to specify post, because we're posting here. And this is where we're also going to specify the request body. So on the client side, we'll have another button that says send data. And we'll do this. Get all the buttons. The first one on the page is the get data button, and then we have the send data button. So we'll do the same thing, but for the send data button, we want to say send message. And in here, we're making a post request, but if you look at our backend code, it's expecting the post request to come in on /to-do. So in our client-side code, we need to make sure that we make a request to do. And then by default, fetch makes a get request. We wanted to make a post request instead, so we have to specify some settings. And inside of here, we can say the method is post. And so what we're saying here is this client-side code is now making a post request to this specific endpoint. And by default, I'm not going to specify any data in the request. Let's actually see what happens here. So if we refresh the page, clear the logs, if we click at send data, we're going to see that it makes a post request. And we're going to see that we're not sending anything right now. We didn't specify anything. And then the response actually comes back. Client send this data, nothing. Like there is no data in the body of the request that the client is sending. And that happened from our backend. Our backend received that and then just sent it right back. But now on the client side, let's actually send some data. And so the way we send data here is by specifying it in the body. And we are going to send an object where we say like title, learn HTTP, and we'll say done is false. So we are now sending this data to our server. The issue now is we need to tell our server what kind of data that we're sending. So if I just do this, we should get the same result. So if we click send data, the server responds with client didn't send us anything. And this actually is where HTTP headers come in, is because we need to tell the server that we are sending it JSON data. So we actually need to specify some headers, and we need to tell it the content type. We're basically letting the server know the kind of data that we're sending it. So we tell it the content type is application/JSON. And now our backend server is going to see that header and just be like, oh, the body is actually JSON. Now I know what to do with it. So now that I've done this, our server is actually going to receive that data, and it should send it right back to us. So we send the data. You'll notice that there's also some options requests happening here. This all has to do with cores and like pre-flight, which we're not going to talk about, but there is a post request that happens, and then you can see the server is sending that data right back. So basically, this is how the client and the server can communicate. The client can send the data and the server can receive that data and do something with it. And in this case, I'm just responding with it, but you could instead like insert into a DB or make another API request or something like that. Something like that, yeah. And I will note, this is working because my backend supports CORS, or cross-origin resource sharing. We have two different origins here. We have localhost 3000, which is where my client lives, and then we have localhost 5000, which is where my server lives. Those are two separate origins. Technically, they shouldn't be able to communicate because this is cross-origin communication, but our server says, yes, we can communicate. It sets all the correct headers and everything else. That's all I'm going to say about that. We're not going to get into CORS. Okay, yeah, so that's one kind of post request. That's one way to receive data. The other thing that we would look at is the client sending data in the URL. So if I said something like get to do / some ID, and then that ID can change, in this case, we'll just respond with the ID. But here I'll do rec.params.id. So this in Express is a way of defining a backend route that receives data in the URL. So you'll notice with the post request, we're receiving data in the body. But here we're receiving it in the URL. And this is okay. This is one way of receiving data on the server side using a GET request, is if you put it in the URL. And in this case, that would allow us to do things like to do /ID 5. And so that will, behind the scenes, would have done like a database lookup or something like that. But you'll see that the server gets access to the thing in the URL. Like we can put any value here. Actually, any value that shows up after the / gets related as the ID on the backend. And so then we can use that ID on the backend. So earlier we talked about GETs are typically used to retrieve or request information. We're not talking about query parameters yet. We will say any data sent is in the URL, headers, or query params. There's no body. So in this case, we're making a GET request, but the data we're including is actually in the URL. And so that's one example of making a GET request, but also including some kind of data. The other thing we talked about is query params used to filter data. So let's talk about a GET request that has like a list of things. So right now, we have a GET request for a single to-do. We might also have a GET request that responds with all of the to-dos, like this. And in this case, it just responds with an empty array like that. So if we do a GET route or a GET request to /to-do, now this responds with an empty array. In the real world, we would look it up in a database or do something like that. But now let me actually show you query parameters, because this is where you might do filtering based on the URL. So if we look at, we turn the timer off. We'll call these query params. So in a backend server, it's possible to receive data using the query parameters. So for instance, you might be talking to an API where they let you say, all right, give me all the to-dos, but we also say sort is title. So we're passing in on the back end, we get access to that. We get access to sort, and then maybe we do a database query that orders them by title. Or we can say done equals true from the client side. And then our server potentially would only respond with data where done is true, or we could change this to done equals false. So this is another way for the server to receive information in a GET request, is through the query parameters. Yeah. All right, anything else that I wanted to talk about? I didn't really show, yeah, we didn't show put or patch, but we're gonna stop here. Hopefully this helps. Mutahai Safwan. I'll give you, I'll put 2 minutes on the clock for you to respond if you have any further questions or comments. But hopefully this helps, because the question you asked was, can you explain API fetching using only pure HTTP methods like get and post? I'm a beginner learning API, and I'm having a hard time understanding what to use when. My general advice is GET requests are for retrieving information. They can use query parameters and URL parameters, but they're typically just, they're not modifying anything on the back end. Post requests will do some kind of modification. Like I don't have the code here, but it could insert into the database, do something else. It's receiving data and doing some other things with that. Cool. Yeah, I'm glad you found it useful. Let's push this code up so you all can see it, and then we'll keep moving on. Glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. Hopefully that that gets you on the right path. Full stack in 30 minutes, sort of. You can go a lot deeper. Yeah, we didn't talk about put, patch, delete. I'll leave it there. There are other HTTP methods. You should consider those. Also, there are HTTP status codes. You should also consider those. The never-ending spiral. Yeah. 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 2023 here. Here is all the example code, and then all of the notes. Honestly, this should have done. Let me change. No, I'm not gonna. This should have been a Markdown file, but it's actually just a bunch of comments in a JavaScript file. But that's where all of that is, and then the codes are in there too. Let's see, HCoder. What is your question? But yeah, we're gonna answer more questions now. I will say I'm not gonna have time to answer all of these. How long have I been live? About 2 hours now. We're probably gonna get to like 5 or 6 more questions. Yeah. What's the next question? Listen. All right. Oh yeah, I did miss a bunch of comments during that, but this relates to that. Are our own answer comments responding to questions helpful to you and the stream, or would it be more helpful if comments were reserved to expand on questions for me to answer? I need all the help I can get. I think that's, so we've been talking a lot about community. That's another aspect of the Coding Garden community is, like, I'm only one guy, right? I can only provide so much help. We just spent an hour answering one question. If people have other questions in the chat, I am totally happy if you try to answer their questions in the chat. And I would encourage people that are getting answers to thank people for answering their questions. Like, it doesn't always have to be an answer from me. If it's answered from someone in the chat, that's totally fine. That's totally fine. Yeah. Yeah, exactly, Adiara. And we talked about that in here, in that these definitions are mostly in line with RESTful APIs. They're just guidelines and best practices. And if we follow them, our APIs will be predictable. But you don't have to listen to any of this advice because it all just works on top of the HTTP specification. But yeah, that's something to consider. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, thank you, Roga. That's a thing. Pokemon Go friend code. Yeah, let me share that. If you want to add me on Pokemon Go, let me get my friend code. Oxneo was saying, what's your opinion on Vue's ecosystem and UI libraries that need to catch up to React? It feels like Vue lost some steam lately. Yeah, it happened. So basically, if you aren't staying up to date with Vue 2 and Vue 3. Um, Vue 3 has had some growing pains. Like it's taken a while for Vue 3 to for all the libraries in the Vue ecosystem to update to Vue 3, including UI libraries and other things in the Vue ecosystem. So that's been a thing. The I haven't stayed up to date. I would say that it's been long enough that the ecosystem is starting to catch up, but that's really all I'll say about this is that definitely happened. Like in the year or two since Vue 3 was released, it took a long time for the community and community packages and libraries to get up to date. So yeah, that is the thing. But I will say, because it's been so long, the libraries and packages in the ecosystem are catching up. And especially, like, I want to build something with Nuxt soon, because Nuxt, I think, is also catching up with Vue 3 and stuff. So yeah. How good is Nest.js? I've never used it, but essentially Nest can work on top of Express, and it gives you more structure. So if you're coming from a Java or .NET or C# background, and you're used to having things like controllers and like a data access layer and stuff like that, Nest.js will give you that on top of your Express app. So I haven't built anything with it, but the older I get, the more I am of the opinion that libraries and frameworks that enforce good architecture and good coding practices are a good thing. Like less opinions creates more mess that eventually me as a consultant will have to get hired to go clean up at your company, and I don't like doing that. So use libraries that have good architecture practices and push opinions on you so that you write good codes. Object or map, which is better? What's the better circumstances to use one or the other? If you're using TypeScript, you typically want to use a map. So if you haven't heard of it, a map, capital M map, is an object you can use in JavaScript that lets you set things with a key and a value. The reason why this is nice to use with TypeScript is that you can type it so that the keys are always the same type and the values are always the same type. If you use an object, you have to use dynamic access, and TypeScript doesn't play very well with that. In terms of like performance and stuff like that, they're both probably just as performant. Like your key lookups on an object are very similar to doing like map.get. And so it might also come down to preference. Like if you prefer using bracket notation for access or dot notation, then you might use an object, but it is going to be dynamic. So that's why, yeah, see you later, HCoder. These days, I more and more reach for map because it's more type safe. Yeah, I think I answered this one earlier for Sunzin, but the front end is written in Vue. The back end is written in Feathers version 4. So Feathers v5 is the latest one. I haven't updated the back end, so it's written using version 4, and the database is MongoDB. Do I like Java or C++ more? I probably would have a better time with Java because I've written a lot of C# and .NET in my days. The last time I wrote C++ was probably for like an Arduino project, but it wasn't even that intense. Before that, I would have written C++ like in my algorithms and data structures course. So I like higher level things. Like I want a language or a framework to do more for me, and Java does. Like C++ is very low level. How to control sleep while working? Have some kind of routine. Go to sleep at a specific time. Make sure you put away your phone and all devices when you go to bed. Make sure like you turn off your notifications. I have actually started, I have so many notifications on my phone right now. I started putting my phone on silent. This is something I started doing probably like 5 or 6 months ago. And it has greatly improved my my life and my demeanor, and also how much sleep I get, because my phone does not vibrate at all. Unless, like, if I know that I'm waiting on certain notifications, I'll put my phone on vibrate. But otherwise, I put my phone on silent, and I only check it like a few times a day. But also, let me share my Pokemon Go friend code. Thanks, Murdoch. But yeah, so to answer your question, Hars, like you need balance in your life. You need to make sure that you set aside a specific time for work, you set aside a specific time for play, you set aside a specific time for sleep, and then adhere to that. Because if you mix them, from my experience, like if you mix them and you don't try to stay to some kind of schedule, then you can, yeah, you'll start like you. For me, it's like hard to stop thinking about work when work is over. So I have to do those things to make sure I have like a clear delineation between like not working and working. I'm on the functional hype train, FPTS. How do I feel about functional programming? I think it's fine. I think there have been certain points in the history of programming and such where there are waves of functional programming that come in and also like trends of functional programming. Like React is technically functional programming. It's functional reactive programming. Which is not just specific to React, but the whole idea behind React.js was actually influenced by functional programming. And that's where the idea of like immutability comes into play. And immutability, like all of these are concepts from functional programming. But I like that JavaScript is both functional and not functional at the same time. Like I've really gotten used to things like reduce, map, and filter. Like all of those are also functional concepts because they're pure functions. They take data in, they spit data out, and as long as they're written in a pure way, they will always output the same thing given the same input. And when you think about React.js and building UI components in that way, that's how you can think about them. You basically are building up a function that given some state renders some UI. And given the same state, it will always render the same UI. So I think it simplifies how we think about certain things, which I think is fun. But I think it also sometimes overcomplicates things. Like if you look at pure functional programming and like purely functional languages, they can get really complex really quick, especially if you're not used to them. I will say like functional programming is almost like a way of life. Like once you start really getting into functional programming, it's easier for you to understand. You'll come across more functional programming things and it'll be easier to understand. But for most people, they don't learn functional programming first. They learn more like imperative style programming they learn that first, which means for them, functional programming is a lot harder to pick up. But I mean, I don't disagree with some of the reasons for like why you want things to be functional. Like the whole argument is like, well, if everything is immutable, then things are simpler because you always have input and output. But at a certain point, that gets really cumbersome to deal with. So that's my opinion. It's cool for a lot of things, but for some things, it's too cumbersome. And I enjoy mutation. I enjoy objects and object-oriented programming, and I think that's the other thing that I'm also getting at is like if I say that I don't like functional programming, I'm not saying that I like object-oriented programming. They're separate. I think they both have their places. I do like how JavaScript mixes OOP with functional. So yeah, good question. I like both too. I'll have to look at this in a bit, Roga. I mean, I looked at it, but I think my initial hesitation was you built an entire SvelteKit app, so I need to review that. That's the only reason I haven't merged it or reviewed it yet. It's a big PR. That's why I haven't just like instantly reviewed it. I'll keep the tab open. I'll have to find some time to review it. Can you show some practical use case of custom hooks in React? I still don't understand when I should use them. There is a website that has a bunch of examples, and I think that's probably going to help you the most. Yeah, usehooks.com. Is this it? This isn't it, but they have a bunch of them. Honestly, this works. I'm not going to write a custom hook because I'm tired. I'm tired. But one custom hook that I've written a lot is like use fetch or use auth, where I basically wrap some common behavior. Like if you think about it like this, honestly, you might force me to just write it because it is a good example. But think about it like this: anytime in a React app, when you're making an API request, like you're doing a fetch, every time you need loading state, you need error state, and then you also need state to represent the data that comes back from that fetch request. So the example of a reusable hook here is creating one called like use fetch. And inside of that hook, you have state for loading, state for data, state for errors, and anywhere in your code base can reuse that hook. That's like one example of it. If you want more examples, check out this website, usehooks.com. It has all kinds. And I think if you just scroll and read, yeah, like they literally have one called use fetch. They literally have one. So the example here is you say use fetch, you pass in a URL, it gives you back the error, the data, and ideally would also give you back like loading state. And so each one of these hooks you look at shows you like how they are reusable. So I would say look at this and look at the ones that these people have created, because that might get you thinking about, or like, what are some of the things in my code base that I've written with hooks that can actually be written in a way where they're more reusable throughout the code base. Yeah, here's even more. There was one specific website, React example hooks. It was like a blog where they post a new hook every. Maybe it's this website, but they just got like a facelift. Anyone know what I'm talking about? Yeah, and so like in the Vue ecosystem now with the composition API, everything in the ecosystem of like libraries you install and stuff like that they all provide custom hooks so that you can use the features of their library. Yeah, I can't find that other site I'm thinking of, but it's the same thing. So I think if you give that website a scroll, you can get an idea of how people are creating reusable things inside of hooks. All right, let's see if we can answer some quick ones. Let's see. Yeah, let's talk about this. So this one comes from Yardan. And they ask, should we be able to solve algorithmic questions like to sum and so on if we want to be front-end developers? I don't know if you know what I'm meaning, but should we have programming in mind? So if you're listening right now, Yardan, I'm going to rephrase your question and let me know if this is what you're asking. Basically, as someone that is building websites, front-end websites, like with React or Vue, is it worth my time to do things like Leet Code or do things like Code Wars? Because typically things like Code Wars have nothing to do with front-end development. So like, let's even just look at like a 6Q, and we look at most completed. We'll look at ones I haven't trained on. Like this is an example of a problem where you can practice programming, but it actually typically doesn't have a direct one-to-one correlation of actually like front-end web development. So this problem says, encrypt this. You want to create secret messages that can be deciphered with decipher this. Your message is a string containing space-separated words. You need to encrypt each word in the message using the following rules. The first letter must be converted to its ASCII code. The second letter must be switched with the last letter. So for example, hello becomes 72 oli, or good becomes 103 do, or hello world becomes 104 oli 119 drlo. So to phrase this question in the context of a problem like this, it's like, all right, I want to learn to build websites. Is it useful for me to practice doing coding problems like this? The short answer is yes. Yes, it is. It is useful, but you should do it sparingly, right? Like, you should not spend all of your time on Code Wars or on LeetCode if you want to be a web developer that builds websites with React or builds backend APIs with Express or whatever else. Like, if you want to be a full stack JavaScript developer, you shouldn't spend 100% of your time on websites like Code Wars or LeetCode. However, websites like this are good to practice basically like converting what someone is asking for into actual code. Like, I think there are aspects of this that we can correlate to being a real world software engineer and a real world web developer. And one of them is interpreting requests, right? So in the real world, let's say you get hired as a front end developer and you're building websites with React. You're going to receive a request from the client or from your dev manager or from your scrum master or something like that. And you need to be able to take that request and turn it into actual code. This is one way of practicing that, right? It's in a different context. We're not building websites here. We're writing functions that are just JavaScript, but it is practice of taking some instructions and trying to write a coding problem that solves those instructions. So like, that's one thing that can correlate. The other aspect, like Dr. Phantom is saying, is critical thinking, right? So like, being able to take a prompt and then critically think exactly through how you can solve that prompt using code. And like, that's a whole other set of a skill set that's required when you're being a front end dev. And so Joshua is saying computational thinking is an important skill. Yeah. So even though as a front end developer, you're not going to get a request like this from your manager or from the client that says, I need you to be able to sort this array or remove all odd numbers from this array. Like, that's not going to be your task for the day, but your task for the day will be interpreting requests and then implementing them with code. And I will say, every now and then in React front ends, and especially if you're dealing with global state management, like in a Redux store or in like a Zustand store or something like that, there are a lot of times where you're working with objects and arrays. And I think that's another thing that you can get a lot of practice with that will help with coding in React or building front-end websites. Like, if you filter here by like arrays and objects, these types of problems are pretty close to the types of things that you'll be doing in front-end development. And also like filtering, like you might get data from the back end and you need to filter it in some way. Yeah, probably JSON. They don't have anything on here for maybe not necessarily object-oriented programming, but just like working with objects, these kinds of things. So this is these are the kinds of things that you would that will help, that might actually correlate to front-end code that you're writing. So yeah. This is how you get good at problem solving, because any project is just a list of problems you need to solve. Yeah, and I think that's the other aspect where this is transferable, is this is solving problems in isolation, right? There are way less stakes. Like, right? Like you're not getting a paycheck for solving one of these problems. There isn't a deadline. There isn't a client that's like saying like, where's my app at? When are you going to solve this? But you get to practice solving problems, and that is directly transferable to being a front-end dev or any other kind of software engineer where you're solving problems, not necessarily in isolation. It's now you have problems in the context of a team and a company and clients, which is different, but there are still like skill sets you can use there. Yeah, and it's not about the topic, it's about reshaping the mind of the dev. And I very much believe this, because so I used to teach programming to beginners, and my wife teaches programming to beginners right now. And one of the things she mentions that she sees in her students, and that I also saw when I was a teacher, is people that have never learned to think critically or break problems down. You don't have that skill set. It's not something you're born with. It's something you have to practice. And Jaicom mentioning like reshaping your brain, basically solving problems like this gets you to think in a way where you're breaking things down into steps that can be solved. And humans don't do that naturally. You're not just born knowing how to do that. It's something that you have to practice doing. And so for a lot of people that are coming into the field of programming that have never done that before, it can be very difficult for them to be given a problem like, well, I need you to build this front-end website that allows users to search for images and they can filter with all of these options. Like for someone that's never practiced breaking problems down, or never practiced like taking instructions and trying to implement them in a logical way, that seems like an impossible task. Like that's a lot you're asking me to do. But if you have the mind of a programmer, you basically break it down. You're like, all right, well, the first thing I need to do is just set up a website. I can do that. All right, now the next thing I need to do is get user input. Okay, I can do that. Now the next thing I need to do is make a request to an API. Okay, I can do that. The next thing I need to do is get more user input, include that in my request. Like you basically are breaking everything down into many steps and then solving all of those little steps. And like that is a skill. That's a skill that you'll use everywhere. So yeah. Is there an alternative to computed properties for updating previous state data? I don't know. What's up, old school rapper? Good to see you. Yeah, when's the last time I did sinus, cosine, sine, cosine? Yeah, and I think that's the other thing about websites like Code Wars and LeetCode is a lot of times the problems are very math heavy or like math focused. That also isn't as transferable to like front-end web dev or like being necessarily being a software engineer. There are some jobs where it is, but not all programming jobs are like that. Yeah, I think I like what Josh is saying here. Is like you could use Code Wars as a place to practice breaking problems down. You don't even have to solve them, right? Like if you look at my Code Katas series that I did in the past over on YouTube, where is it? This one. So this is like over 60 episodes. And in every episode, I will take a problem and break it down into solvable steps first. And basically break it down into pseudocode first. And that's just step one. And learning how to do that, like Josh is saying, is a skill set in and of itself. You don't even have to implement the pseudocode. You don't have to actually solve the problem. But if you can break the problem down into as many small steps as possible, that's some really good practice that you can get in. But yeah, if you haven't seen the Code Katas playlist and you're like learning to code, it's definitely a good place to start because you basically get to see my thought process. Like given some prompt like this, how do I first solve the problem so that I can then turn it into code? Because too many new programmers try to just start coding first without actually solving the problem first. And if you can't solve the problem, like without code, you're not going to be able to solve the problem with code. So that's something else to consider. Yeah, I think so I haven't heard this Roga Devs who is saying there's a strong argument, which is very in line with what Joshua was just saying. There's a strong argument to support teaching students pseudocode and how to solve problems without real code before actually teaching languages. With the boom in AI, there are people who think you'll be writing entire programs. It's nothing more than your own pseudocode. Exactly. And like that's why people that are already programmers are like, kind of have a leg up on using AI tools because we know how they're working under the hood. And we know how they basically need to generate code. Is like they need to be told, at least right now, the AI tools might get better and better at like natural language processing. But right now, if you want really good results with like ChatGPT and like GitHub Copilot, you kind of need to be able to solve the problem yourself at a high level first before you can get the AI to solve it. So that's another aspect for sure. When would I use the context API over Redux? These days, probably only in small applications, because a large application is going to need a lot more stuffs, and I probably would use something like the Redux toolkit. And at that point, you just have a lot of your own code that you wouldn't necessarily need if you were using Redux Toolkit. And if you only use the context API, you'll run into rendering issues where wherever the context is brought in at the top level, that whole tree will potentially re-render if you're not bringing in the state in the correct way, or if you don't have the right library to use it. So if not Redux, Zustand or something like that for sure. Yeah. Looks like Joshua agrees. It's just a blue cup. It's not even a mug. It's just a blue cup. See you later, Vittorio. Thank you for the question. All right. We've been live for almost 3 hours. We can answer a few more questions. Let's keep going. And thank you, Yardan, for your question earlier. So if you asked a question, type exclamation mark here. It will bubble up. I'll see it, and I'll try to answer it. And also, I'll be back in 1 minute. I have to take a bathroom break. See you soon. Hello. We're back. We are back. What am I drinking today? Asked Joshua. Just water. I've been just drinking a lot of water lately, and then also some like powdered sports drink, and also I've been starting every morning with it's basically like powdered sports drink, but it also has vitamins. So like, yeah, I really don't drink tea anymore. And if I need caffeine, I'll actually take caffeine pills. So yeah. What is the brand of my shirt? I just found it on Amazon. If you search for Henley is what this is called. It's basically a collarless shirt, or like a Mandarin collar shirt. Yeah. They look kind of like this. If you search for Henley, Henley. Also, if you search for like yoga shirt, you'll see them. It's probably closest to this, like half collar or no collar. so I worked. One of my first jobs out of college was at a large enterprise, a Fortune 500 company, and it was the dress code at the company. The dress code was like business casual, and I don't like that. I don't like wearing collared shirts and stuff, because one of the things I thought was like a collar and also like a tie is like it's the man getting you down. It's basically the man with their hand around your neck. So the shirts that I would wear, I would literally cut the collar off as a protest. And apparently I didn't have to cut the collar off, because you can actually buy shirts that don't have a collar on them at all. So yeah, that's a thing. And these days I'll wear collared shirts. I don't mind as much. Well, so from when I started in my career until now, like things have changed a lot in terms of like interpretation of the rules for business casual as well. So it varies. It depends. I remember, I don't know if I've told this story on stream before, but I interned at this Fortune 500 company before I got the job there. And the first day of the internship, I showed up without a collared shirt. Now, it was a polo shirt that I had cut the collar off, but my new boss that I got, he was like, we're about to meet some very high up people in the company, and you have to wear a collared shirt. Like, and so he literally was like, go home, get a shirt, and then come back. So yeah, that was a thing. Cool. All right, I think we answered this one earlier. Yeah, post pandemic, our idea of business casual has loosened up quite a bit for sure. Yeah, and so Harush Hija, I cannot envision a polo shirt with the collar cut off. It looks like this, honestly. It just looks like this. The thing is, like, I also like I was talking to my wife about this because I feel like these days there's a lot of kids out there, I guess Zoomers, that want to rebel against the system. But the issue is, if you don't understand how the system even works, how can you rebel against it, right? Like, basically, if you rebel against the system without understanding how it works and without understanding how you can operate within the system, at that point, you're basically just like, you're not operating within the confines of society. So my whole point is, you need to understand how the system works, work within the system in order to be able to tear down the system, and also in order to be able to understand the rules that can be bent or the rules that can be broken, in like a malicious compliance kind of way thing. I don't know. What am I saying? Let's keep moving. React is a library because it doesn't include a lot of stuff. So, for example, if you look at Vue.js, Vue is a framework. Why is Vue a framework? They have a router. They have Vue router, which is built in. It's technically a separate library, but it can be included very easily, and it's from the same team that built Vue. That's included. Also, you have things like state management that's completely built in. You also have things like styling and scoped styling. And these types of things are built into the framework. What else? Basically, when you're building an app with Vue.js, there are a lot of things that that Vue.js and associated libraries will just do for you, and you don't have to install another library. With React, when you're building a React app, it's not just React. You also have global state management, so you might choose Redux, or you might choose Zustand, or you might choose Jotai. You also need routing, so you might choose React Router, or I think, does Tanstack have a router now? Or like, there's several different routers you could choose from. You also will choose a styling solution, so you might use styled components, or you might use Tailwind, or you might use CSS modules. And then what else? I guess that's kind of it. But basically, the reason we say it's a library is like, it only does one thing. Everything else that you want to do, you need to bring in a separate library to combine them together to basically build your own framework. Whereas like with Vue, all of this stuff is included, and you typically don't have to bring anything extra unless it's very specific. Yeah. Oh yeah, there's transitions in Vue. You don't need a separate library for that. I would say Svelte is a framework because Svelte similarly includes all of these things. It includes things for scope styling. It includes like if you're going to do routing, then they have Svelte Kit. Basically, you could build a Svelte Kit app and not install a bunch of external libraries. Same thing with Vue. React, not so much. React is a framework? Yeah. Well, I think, but that's my whole argument is like, it's not simpler, and it basically requires you to build your own framework. So use something that already is a framework. Yeah. What do I use for styling nowadays? I like Tailwind. I've been using Tailwind a lot. But if not Tailwind, then CSS modules. That's my go-to. a beginner project for React, check out the project ideas repo by Florin Pop. This one. There are also some forks from it, but this one has 66,000 stars. Basically, he has, and there's also community contributions to get things listed here. But they have beginner projects, they have intermediate projects, and they also have advanced projects. And every single project, so let's say you're a React beginner, you probably should be able to build like the image flip. Well, no, not the image flip. I'm thinking like a guessing game. I don't know. Pomodoro clock could be interesting. But if you click in this, it has user stories, bonus features, and then examples that you can look from. So this is basically, I would say just choose anything from the beginner list here. Yeah, I do agree that a to-do app is good. And a reason a to-do app is good is because it explores all the parts of a front-end framework or front-end library that you need to do, like DOM events and conditional rendering and rendering lists and binding styles and all the things that you do in like every app you do in a to-do app, which is why it's a good example. But if you don't want to pick a to-do app, pick something from that list. Yeah. Check these out. These are an interactive blog. What is it? Oh, so they have blog posts that have like embedded code samples with this is pretty cool. Yeah, so it's embedded code samples with like the examples running on the right hand side. That's nice. Yeah. Didn't I say half a year ago that I don't like Tailwind, that I much prefer to write CSS quickly? Listen, we all change. We all have a change of heart. But I would recommend watching the video I did a while back. Called I'm Trying Tailwind. And it talks about why I'm trying Tailwind and what I think of it. And I think, so basically that video came out when I first was even attempting to use Tailwind. And now, if I'm not using a component library that's like not based on Tailwind, so if I was using Material UI or like Chakra UI, or if I'm working on a Vue app and I'm using like Vuetify, I wouldn't use Tailwind because those component libraries have a bunch of utility functions already built in, so I wouldn't need Tailwind. But if I'm writing styles from scratch, Tailwind makes a lot of sense in a lot of scenarios. It doesn't make sense in every scenario, and you shouldn't rewrite everything with Tailwind, but in some scenarios it makes sense. Yeah. No, GG. No. So here's the other thing. If you're hearing me like talk about how React is a library, not a framework, and like you should use other things, I'm talking to people that work at companies and that make decisions. Because if you're a beginner to web dev, you should learn React. Like that's how you're going to get a job. Most places are using React. I'm not telling you as a beginner that you shouldn't learn React. Like as a beginner front-end web dev, if you already know the basics of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, React is probably the next thing that you should learn, because that's just where we're at in the world. I get to complain because I've been doing it for a long time, and I know that there are better options. But as a learner, no, don't stop learning React because I said so. You should learn React. Yes, you should learn React. But just know that once you learn it, once you start building things with it, there are, I think, better things out there. There are better ways of better and easier ways of doing things. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's another good point to bring up, Mariano. If we're talking about React as a library or a framework, the issue, I guess, with this logic here is like technically, once you start using React, you're kind of locked into it because it has its own ways of building components and rendering. And the logic that a library typically could be swapped out for something else that does a similar thing. Like, I guess technically you could swap out React for Preact or something like that. And the rest of your code base could stay the same. But that is one way to think about it. So it's probably on the spectrum of library to framework, it's probably closer to a framework. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's what I'm getting at America 2050. It's like I don't write that much custom CSS to begin with, so I'm probably using a component library to begin with. And some of the component libraries that are based on Tailwind, like Daisy, are really nice. Like if you had to choose between Daisy UI and Bootstrap, you probably would choose Daisy UI. Like they have so many different themes, and like because this is so you can choose a theme, and then because it's built on top of Tailwind, now you get to do the thing like you're used to in Bootstrap, where you just have a class that you can use. But if I want to modify this and like give it a little bit more margin or give it an outline, now I just have to add a couple of Tailwind classes and I'm done. So I would say like the Tailwind ecosystem is also really interesting when you look at some of the component libraries. Like there's Daisy UI, there's Flowbyte, there's is it Chad CN or Shad CN and stuff like that. So that's the other thing to consider is like if you were going to use a component library or a CSS framework anyways, if you use one that's built on top of Tailwind, you now get the benefits of like the Tailwind design system and stuff like that. Yeah. Don't do what I do. Do what I teach. Yeah. As a front-end dev, how important is it to learn Node? I think you should understand what's happening in the backend, because as a front-end dev, you typically are building things that are interacting with a backend. And the more you know about what's potentially happening behind that GET request or that POST request, the easier it's going to be for you to debug, the easier it's going to be for you to be able to collaborate and communicate with your backend team. So I don't think everyone should become a full stack developer, but I do think knowing how things work on the other side will only make your job easier. Yeah. Daisy UI was felt nice. Yeah. Yep. Cool. All right. We're pretty much out of time, so let's pick a couple more to answer quickly, and then we'll get out of here. How do you come up with ideas to program? That app ideas repo that I shared earlier. But yeah, we also do coding improv. So like if you haven't heard of that stream that we've done in the past, basically I at the beginning of the stream I get a couple of different words from the chat, and then we just build something random using those words. Now a lot of times these things aren't useful, but they are good practice. They're good practice in just like learning new frameworks or libraries, and also just practice in taking an idea, implementing it, and then moving on from there. So yeah. And we're working on the new chat. No, I don't have time to code today. It honestly, I might don't quote me on this. I might do a members only stream this week where we work on these things. So these won't be live for everyone, but if you are a YouTube member, Twitch sub, or a patron, there are supporters only channels in the Discord, and I might go live for only supporters and work on these things. Probably if it's gonna happen, it would probably happen on like Wednesday or something like that. Yeah, we talked about this one earlier. How do I stay motivated? How do I manage my time between life work and videos? I talked about it earlier. I think having distinct separations between all the things that you do help. I will also say that I'm not good at this. I'm also not good at staying motivated. I think lately the way that I've stayed motivated is trying to eat well, trying to exercise, and trying to get good sleep. Because if you take care of your body, that in turn will make sure that your mind is healthy enough to have motivation and to actually work through the things that you want to do. Because I think when you think about it, motivation is really just having the energy to do the things that you already want to do, right? Like, so if you're someone that's like, oh, I want to get motivated, there are things that you want to do already, right? You already have that part of your mind where you're like, well, I want to write code more, or I want to get in shape, but you don't have the motivation to do them. So like, you kind of just need a healthy enough body and mind that you can have the energy to do those things. So what am I saying? Energy. You need energy. In order to have energy, you got to take care of yourself. So I think that's where I would start. If you're not getting good sleep, if you're not eating well, if you're not exercising, pick one of those things and start there. It'll help with motivation. Panzer is a good boy. How do I get proficient at CSS? Practice. Just practice. I will say CSS battles are fun. So cssbattle.dev, you can pick one, and then they give you like a specific layout or image that you need to implement, and then you just practice. Just practice, practice, practice. That's funny that ads are being shown to no one over on Twitch. Yeah. How can I realize saves from my game in JavaScript? This is a big one because you potentially need backend logic. You need to be able to serialize the state of the game and then save that in a database or save it in local storage. So yeah, that's a tricky one. I've not thought about. I don't think I'm going to do an official Vue course. I think if I do another course, it'll probably be Svelte. Yeah. What's up, Dexter? Welcome in. Good to see you. Can I ask a non-code? I don't know if you're still here, SC May. What is the best OTA DVR with built-in storage? I do not watch over the air. So OTA is over the air. DVR is digital video recorder. I don't watch over the air TV. But in my recent trips to thrift stores to find VHS tapes and like VHS players and stuff, I came across this Memorex. Is it DVR? I don't even know if these are good or not. Or no, it was something like an hard disk drive DVR. I can't even find it anymore. And I didn't even know these things existed, but it's literally, is this it? Maybe it's not, but it's literally an appliance that has a hard drive inside of it. And it's basically like TiVo without a subscription. Because like you can plug cable into it and then it just has all the, like you can tell it to record channels and it can record from DVDs to a hard drive. I don't know. I don't use anything like that. So I can't have any, I don't have any suggestions. Can you recommend a service to host my database Postgres? Look at neon.tech. So this is serverless Postgres that does the hosting. There's also Elephant SQL, which is Postgres as a service. And then, I mean, I used to use Heroku Postgres. I don't know what the free plan is anymore. You watch local channels on over the air? Yeah. I don't even do that. All of my media consumption is via streaming services or YouTube. So yeah, I mean, this will get you paid by the hour. And then there's also, what's the one we used? Oh yeah, you're totally right. Yeah, Supabase will give you managed Postgres. That's probably the way to go. Because you can spin up Supabase, but then you don't even have to use their stuff. You will literally get a Postgres connection URL and you can connect to it. And then the other one is, well, we haven't deployed listed yet. When we deploy listed, we're probably going to use Neon, but otherwise we haven't deployed it yet. What's the one that I used for fresh spots? Render? It wasn't Render. But I think Render can technically host databases too. I think Fly.io can host databases too. Basically, all of these things. No. I can't remember the name. Host a stream about motivation, consistency, and personal growth in general. This is a fun idea. It would be good just to have like a non-coding stream where we just talk about life. I'm open to it. I really am. I can't remember what it was though. We have to look up Heroku alternatives. It'll be in that list. Was it? No, it wasn't Render though. It was a different site. Railway. Can't believe I couldn't remember that. We used Railway. So Railway lets you spin up a lot of different things, but when you go to start a new project, you can say Postgres. Actually, this is crazy. The fact that I'm not even logged in and it lets me do this, I'm literally provisioning a Postgres database right now. Look at that. And then it'll be deleted after 24 hours if I don't claim the project. But yeah, Railway is another one. The only issue is you only get a certain number of free hours, and I don't think it's enough to host your database for an entire month without paying. But yeah, to answer this question, can I recommend a service to host my database? First up, probably Supabase. You can create a project. Don't even use supabase.com. Just go into your settings and get the Postgres connection URL, and you're done. Second up, check out Neon. They host serverless Postgres. So if you're deploying things to like Vercel or Netlify functions, this is a Postgres database that can handle that. There's also Elephant SQL. You get very little free data, but if it's just like a dev play database, Elephant SQL you can check out. There's also render.com, fly.io, and Railway, and probably a bunch of others too, but that's my order of what I would do. If I had to pick right now, I would probably go with Supabase because they have a dev tier where you can just have a free half a gigabyte database. Cool. Yeah, we answered that one earlier. Well, so Neon, let's talk about that, at least as much as I know about that. So when you are connecting to a database from a serverless function, it's possible that because it's possible many instances of a serverless function will spin up when multiple requests are coming in. Or if it's an edge function, because now let's say you have 10 users, they're all on different parts of the world, they all visit your app at the same time, they're all going to access a different edge function, which means each one of those edge functions needs to connect to the database. And so the issue you come across is with serverless or edge deployments, there will be too many connections to the database, so you need connection pooling. And you need connection pooling in some kind of proxy. And that's essentially what Neon provides. Well, they provide a lot of other things, but one of the things they provide is basically a database proxy that does connection pooling. So all of your edge and serverless instances will connect to the connection pool, which in turn basically load balances the connection to the actual database. So, but that's really all it is. It's kind of like it's a database proxy. Load balancer. But what Neon offers that is also very interesting, which I haven't played around with before, is database branching. Like this is the concept that they came up with, where just like you have branches in your deployments, like you might have your development branch, staging, production, maybe you have QA, you have multiple staging branches. Neon lets you literally branch your database. So you can take like a dev branch or a dev instance, branch it, and now you have a new connection URL that is like that version of the database snapshotted. And then you can also go in the reverse direction. So like you could take your production database instance, branch it so that it can be used for development. So now development has access to real production data, but it's not interfering with production. Yeah, so Planet Scale is the same thing for MySQL, but that's what Neon allows you to do. So yeah. Can I make a list of these? I think I did a long time ago. Let me pull it up. There you go. This was back in when Heroku went free. So Heroku alternatives. Read about them here. But basically, you have platform as a service, all of these different ones. Do we not recommend Supabase in this list? I guess we didn't. And then you have infrastructure as a service, which is like actually spinning up servers. There's no free way to do that because that costs real money. Yeah. Okay. Honestly, somebody should be able to clip when I gave a quick rundown because I feel like that at the end of my rant when I opened up a bunch of tabs, I gave a summary that is very likely less than a minute, and you can clip me talking about that list of things. So, yeah, we answered that one earlier. I'll just answer this. Like, we've been using Svelte. I like Svelte a lot. Like, basically, in my tool bag of things I'll reach for to build apps, Svelte has kind of replaced Vue. Like, these days, if I want to build something, I'll probably reach for Svelte. Yeah. What do I prefer, GraphQL or TRPC? Yeah, it's crazy to think about that at this point. GraphQL is old. I haven't built things with either of these, but if it's a small enough app and you have a mono repo with your front end and your back end, TRPC kind of seems like it's the way to go. GraphQL is nice that it basically can have a client of any kind, and so as long as your GraphQL backend exposes the schema, then you could have a client that is written in Java or Swift talking to that backend. Whereas with TRPC, that's not as easy. You could potentially use something like the OpenAPI plugin and then use the OpenAPI client generator, but it's not supported out of the box. Like TRPC is if your front end and your back end are in the same code, like same monorepo code base, and you can share the types. GraphQL is probably better for larger apps and when you can't necessarily share the code like that. However, if you take a look at the VOD, it'll be on YouTube soon, but last week on Twitch, we talked about APIs. And we talked about how we talked about all this stuff. So TRPC is one way of doing it. There's also this thing called Zadios, which I really like because it allows you to specify a contract similar to like TRPC, but then it makes it so that you implement that contract using Express. So it's like a really easy way to start to get really good type safety in an existing Express app. And then TS REST is basically TRPC, but with more support for like OpenAPI and stuff like that. But we talked about a bunch of that stuff last week, if you're interested. There. All right, I gotta get out of here. Do we do some Flutter? Haven't written any Flutter on stream, but it would be fun to do. All right, I'll try to answer this one. How do I handle YouTube addiction? I always think about other things while working. I think this goes back to what I talked about earlier, is having a clear delineation between the different aspects of your life. So you have work, you have play, you have sleep, and try to keep those things separate. So my tactics are like making sure that I silence my phone. You could also have some kind of, you can install extensions that will help with this, like in a web browser, or even install apps on your phone that will prevent you from visiting certain websites for more than a certain amount of time, or will remind you that, hey, you need to take a break or whatever else. I don't know. That's really all I have to say about that. Okay, let's get out of here. This was super fun, though. I think our live stream transition back to YouTube has been fun. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Thank you for all of your questions. I'll leave you with, please, please, please go join the Discord if you have not. And then if you haven't yet today, then you should send a message in the daily stand-up. So I'll give a rundown of that for those of you that missed it. Basically, our hope is that we can get more community engagement. And thank you, Field of Kush. Thank you for that resub. We can get more community engagement because that's what Coding Garden is. It's not just me up here talking to you all. It is us, right? So like you have the longtime community members in the chat. We also have the Discord, and also basically when I click stop streaming, the Discord is where we're all going to go. So join the Discord. We have this channel called Daily Stand Up, where every day you can send a message that says, what did you do yesterday? What are you going to do today? What blockers do you have? And this is just a way to get visibility into the community. You can see a lot of the regulars that you typically see in Twitch chat and stuff like that. They all did their daily stand-up. And then for you, if you're a self-learner, so let's say you're learning to code, but you're not going to a code school. It's all self-run, what do I want to say? Self-regulated, and that like you are choosing to wake up and learn to code every day. This can be a place that will help you stay accountable, right? Because if you send a message in here and it becomes a routine of this is what I did yesterday, this is what I'm going to do today, it can help you stay accountable when you're teaching yourself to code. Yeah, if you're self-taught. We also have the weekly discussion channel. So right now there's a discussion on this. There's a trend to move apps logic and rendering back to the backend. Things like React server components, meta frameworks, that include things like server-side rendering and HTMX. What do you think of this? Is it a good trend? Is it bad? Do you not care? So if you have any opinions on that, or you want to see what people in the community said about this, check out the weekly discussion channel. And lastly, if you have any clips from today's stream, share them in the clip share channel. So yeah, that's how to clip, but also in this thread, you can share things that have happened. And at the end of every month, we're going to wrap up all of the clips. I think that's it for the Discord. Definitely join the mailing list. I send out go live notifications. I'll be sending out weekly updates and also weekly challenges. And if you haven't over on Twitch, you should follow on YouTube because this is where we're gonna be. And then lastly, the next stream. So the next stream is planned for how do we enable those? Oh yeah, that's the last thing. So if you don't see those channels on Discord, you want to click on channels and roles and then make sure that you click yes under discussion channels. And so that will make those channels appear. And same thing, if you haven't been to the Discord in a while, you're going to want to select your notification roles. So by default, none of these are selected, but if you want to get notified in Discord when I go live to write code, you're going to want to choose the coding notifications role, which is by clicking that button, you choose it. But also I do other things. So if you want to see that or get notified for that, you'll click on those. But yeah, the live stream schedule is here. My plan is to go live on Friday to work on listed. It's been over a month since we last worked on listed. So I'd love to see you on Friday. In the meantime, let me unpin this. In the meantime, go follow my personal Twitch channel, W3CJ, because I'm going to go live for some IRL streams, and I'm going to be going live on my personal channel. So if you want to tune in for that, follow over there. And then also if you're in the Discord, click on the IRL notifications button if you want to get notified. I think that's it. I think that was a mouthful. We lost a lot of people as I'm winding down here, but yeah, again, thank you everybody for tuning in. If you're on Twitch, we'll potentially do a raid, so stick around for that. And that's it. Thank you, Murdoch. So thank you for the 8 months of membership. I appreciate that. And thanks for all the supports today over on Twitch too. Appreciate you all. And Andrew, thanks for becoming a member today. That's it. That's all. We'll see you later this week. Wherever you are in the world, have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or night. And until next time, here's this.